Hey guys, what is up? Good to see you, and welcome to it's not a special edition or anything like that. And just to let people know that no, we have not moved the show. The show is still going to be officially Tuesday nights, but just because of some scheduling conflicts and stuff like that, and us not wanting to outright cancel this week's episode, we join you tonight, Wednesday. But we will probably we'll get back onto our normal schedule of Tuesday nights. But for now, special Wednesday broadcast, whatever you want to call, of the movie discussion pocket dimension. The dimension where time does not exist, and the only thing that matters is film. The denizens of this dimension, of course, are myself, Cole, and my partner, Jay. And so now we're going to do another sort of compare and contrast type episode, as we did before, months back, when we did the film Insomnia. We did the original European version, and then the week after we did the American remake. This one, we're doing it the other way around. We started with the remake. That wasn't on purpose. It's just the way it worked out. We started with the remake, and now we're going to go back to the original. The original film being a Danish film. But as we discussed, it's the same director who did the remake, was remaking his own film, and that would be a Danish director, Ole Bornedal. And this film came out in 1994, 3 years before the remake. So that's where we're at. And as we noted when we were trying to plug the show a little bit and stir up some interest, it is the first movie role and possibly like even screen role for the actor Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, who is become very well known over here now ever since his role on Game of Thrones, where he plays Jaime Lannister. So you get to, if you're interested in seeing him in a younger role, this is him back in the mid-90s.
He looks so different. I don't even know if I would have recognized him if I hadn't known beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, it was the name. I know the name. It jumped out at me. So, as I've said, my my lack of recognition with faces has been well documented. That sometimes even things that are sort of obvious to other people can go past me. So it's possible that it could have too. But I just remember when I was looking up the movie, I saw his name right off. So I was like, oh, Jay. And I thought, yeah, because he is Danish. It makes sense.
Right.
As we say about a lot of these foreign actors that eventually become well-known sort of in Hollywood and mainstream movies and stuff, it's not like they appear out of thin air. They usually have film and TV careers in their respective countries, and he's no different. And this would be his first role and a leading role right off the bat. And kind of cool when you think the remake did Ewan McGregor. They're of a similar age, I think, and have this sort of similar sort of clean-cut look going in both films.
Exactly. I think
you buy both of them. You buy both of them as at what they are, a young law student looking to make a little extra money.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as we said, so a lot of talking about this film, of course, will be comparing it to the remake. I don't think this one has as many pronounced or at least major changes as what we saw with Insomnia, where I really felt like Insomnia. Of course, the main thing I thought they changed was the nature of the character Dormer. How Dormer in the remake, how Al Pacino's character I thought was a little less interesting. He was more of a stereotypical kind of gritty cop that had seen it all. Blah blah blah. He was flawed, but and not that interesting. Whereas in the original one, as played by what's his name, Stellan Skarsgård. I thought he was a much more interesting character because he was, he seemed to have some almost sort of like low-level sociopathic tendencies, like sort of a lack of empathy and stuff. And in some ways, he even came across as a little bit more menacing than the killer he was chasing, I thought, in that. And I thought that was one of the things, even though I do like the remake, I thought it was one of the things where the remake wasn't as good. I definitely thought that. But I don't feel like this film makes any really big departures as far as the characters go.
Yeah, I think in this film, it really sucks because we have to compare it to the first one that we watched last week, or the remake.
Right.
It would have been better if we'd done this one first.
Yeah. But, we got a little backwards this time.
But it sucks having to just compare them. But I didn't see this film until many years after the first one, or sorry, the remake.
Right.
I wasn't even aware this existed, but. I think the characters are actually fleshed out a little bit better. There's better character development in here, especially of the girlfriends.
Yeah, they get a little more screen time, don't they?
Yeah, and you get a little bit more backstory on what's going on with them and their lives, and as opposed to just being set pieces in the remake. They were just just there really. Patricia Arquette didn't really have a whole lot of screen time aside from actually seeing the killer. When he saw
that's true. It's like in the remake they kind of sacrificed a little bit of character so they could focus more on like the grisliness and stuff, because it is true I was saying how there's not too many differences, but one of the differences is right at the beginning, whereas the films open very differently.
Yeah.
Where we have, as we said last week with the remake, it's kind of doing the standard serial killer type opening, like Seven and all that stuff, where we've got one of the murders actually taking place, and we've got the cops, including the cop who is the killer, talking to the media about it, and them cutting back and forth. Whereas this film doesn't open with a killing; it just opens with our main character with the other characters just in a setting, sitting down to dinner, and they're just talking to each other, and then that sort of comes on the TV in the background.
Right.
But it's more, instead of so this movie, unlike the remake, it's more about introducing us to the characters first, then telling us about the killing that's going on, whereas it's the other way around in the remake. So yeah, that's true. When there are a few more scenes where particularly the female characters get a little bit more dialogue, and you get a little bit or better sense of their personalities and stuff. As you said, I don't know, they probably didn't mean to, but it does sort of reduce the female characters in the remake to kind of, as we said, set pieces and stuff. Patricia Arquette might have been an interesting character, but what she just more or less winds up as is the girlfriend in distress and the damsel in distress sort of thing, where the whole thing with the prostitutes going on, and she's upset with him, and then, of course, her being in peril. Whereas this one, that happens too, but we get a little bit more beforehand. I mean, in both versions, she is an actress. But I'm trying to remember, did they have anything like of her doing a rehearsal or anything in the remake?
I didn't think so. They just had
they talked about it, but I don't think they actually showed her at a rehearsal or anything.
Joyce, instead, like in this film, Joyce actually walked in to where she was rehearsing. The other one, I think that she just met her outside of the theater there.
Mm-hmm. And it is kind of cool in the original that you get to see something she's doing, because there's a part where a little bit of coincidence is she's like playing somebody who's playing dead or something like that. She's lying down and somebody's talking to her. I can't remember exactly which play it is from, but it's a nice little tie-in where they're trying to make it tie it into the plot a little bit. But so some of the names are the same and some of them aren't. In both versions, our main character's name is Martin. And in both versions, the prostitute that gets involved with is Joyce. Mm-hmm. But then there's just like little tweaks here and there. I guess they figure, Martin works there, works here, but Jens gets turned to James, which is logical, if you're going to change Jens to something that sounded more American or whatever, James is a good alternative. They both start with J and with S. So and I can't remember what Patricia Arquette's character's name was, but in this version, the girlfriend's name is Kalinka, which I think is just a great name. Especially to be like yelling when he's like worried about it, like Kalinka. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And and as we said, besides her, the other girlfriend almost has no role at all in the remake. Whereas this, we get to see a little bit, because she's in training to work at a church in some capacity. I'm not sure what it is. She was saying like she was a bell ringer, which there's more to it than that, though, because apparently she leads services. So something maybe that's equivalent of a vicar, something like that, I think. Because she was actually going to like lead services, say words and stuff. There's a part where they're doing like communion and stuff, and she's the one up there, addressing the congregation.
I'm not really sure, but I'm guessing maybe something like, not an altar boy, but maybe something along those lines. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, but obviously something above that, like a real position, right?
She was actually giving communion.
Mm-hmm. And they tell us like she'd been in training, and this is sort of like her first shot at like doing it for real. I think is what it was. Like she'd been in training, and it meant something to her, and that does come into the plot a little, which is nice, and we get to see a little bit more about her and Jens's relationship. I have to say, now I'm not saying this makes it better, and I don't know if it's the actors or the script or both or whatever, but. I always thought that Jens is a little more, even though he's just like James, he's kind of weird and has his strange ideas about things and be kind of callous. He seems a little more likable.
Exactly.
Than Josh Brolin's character.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a fault. Maybe they said, we're going to make it a little different here. We'll make James a little more of a jerk. I'm just saying, in this movie, I thought he's a little more likable than James. Jens.
Yeah, I don't think Jens was
he's a little more understandable.
He's not really a red herring, I don't think.
No, which is weird because he's actually more direct. Because remember, in the remake, you have the whole scene where where Martin comes and talks to him in the laundromat. And he doesn't actually come out and say it, but when he says, they've got a suspect, and he's like, it could be the wrong guy. He's like, oh yeah, who is it? It's me. And then James laughs, and he's just like, and he says some things to James, but he doesn't say, was it you? In this one, he really does. He just says, was it you? Did you do that? Like, he even asks him. And I'm thinking he's actually, less suspicious than James is. But they explain the challenge thing a little bit better, too, I think. Either that or my memory is just bad because, I saw this movie more recently than the other, and I remember the conversation they're having because both have the scene where they're discussing it, where they're in the law class and the professor's talking, and they're talking to each other. Maybe it's just because it's fresher in my memory, but to me, they kind of explain the challenge thing a little better. Mm-hmm. And I like how he puts the stakes, which isn't in the original. It's like, if you lose, you have to marry your girlfriend, which skips to the end. They both wind up getting married, which I think it's a sort of it's kind of funny, right? If you lose the challenge, that's your penalty. You have to get married. And that's a whole different thing. So as the movie opens differently, it ends very differently, too.
That's what I was going to say. It's a different ending, different opening. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the remake, did he actually have sex with his girlfriend in the morgue?
No. They held back on stuff like that too.
Okay, see, that was
I think is a really
difference.
Important. Yeah, that's a really important scene because.
But it really makes you wonder though, because it kind of makes you think that maybe he's crazy, because he's actually getting turned on in the morgue, and I don't know if that's a normal reaction to have.
No, and I like that. That's something.
Yeah.
But I think the remake, maybe they were just like, oh, we can't have that. This is supposed to be our hero. We're supposed to be our hero. We can't have. But I like it because it's sort of like, he's getting pulled into it a little bit, because it fits with what in both versions the previous security guy told him. Like, being here is going to kind of get to you and make you kind of weird. And in this, you sort of see a symptom of it, where like at first he's really freaked out by the bodies, and then to the point where like his girlfriend's there and he doesn't even care about the bodies, and it's sex. Plus, it actually adds a little bit later to the whole part about the semen, right?
Right.
Now,
it makes sense.
It's still a bit of a reach. In my experience, at least, I was always very sure where my semen went. But still, you could be like, well, he had sex in that general area, so maybe some of his semen is in the whole thing about it being planted or whatever. But it adds another wrinkle to it, which I like. But but still, this follows the same plot, just to let people know. It follows the same plot. Young law student taking a night job as a security guard at like a sort of a medical institute that has a morgue down below. And same sort of thing. There's an old security guard there telling them the ropes. A lot of the dialogue is very similar, at least in the translation I got, where he's saying where he tells them, get yourself a radio and welcome to Mars and all that stuff.
Oh, it's even like some of the stuff they say is in English, and it's almost shot for shot, a lot of those scenes. Because, it shows the moths and the light fixture.
Yeah.
It shows him looking over at the red light, and this timer, and a lot of it's exactly the same. And I'm guessing that's intentional, because I started thinking about this. I'm willing to bet this director did this solely for the money, because this is 7 came out in 95, right? 1 year after the original. 1 year after this film. So
as we said, that seemed to really kick off it being like a trendy thing, these serial killer type movies.
I'm guessing they approached him, and
that's the whole reason there probably was a demand for it, right?
Approached him, and I'm guessing the remake probably did fairly well, I would imagine.
Yeah,
because I know I saw it in the theater, and it was made its rounds on cable and stuff. So,
and it is true that it's only a few years later, and it's the same director, so you can understand him sort of having the approach, thinking, well, a lot of American audiences aren't going to see my original, so there's no reason in this remake to, make it that different, to stray. It's like, this is my chance to tell that story again to a different audience, so why should I deviate that much? So I'm not going to come down on him and be like, oh, he should have felt the need to make a bunch of changes, or to reinterpret his own story, because why not?
Well, he has a bigger budget, so maybe he can do some things a little differently, shot wise, that he couldn't accomplish before. And there are some things in the remake that I like better. I think the casting is a little better. Aside from Martin, I think Martin is great. And I
actually really like the actor that plays Jens. I mean, nothing against Josh Brolin, because he's good too, but I really like that actor that played Jens.
I just feel like Josh Brolin brought something special to that role that the characters are really completely different. Like you were saying, they really played that role a little differently.
Yeah, Josh Brolin's a little more, a little edgier, I think.
Well, he seems like he's absolutely insane.
Yeah, he seems pretty dangerous. Like he's down for anything. Whereas Jens, it's like you get that he's, I don't know what you want to say, like he's kind of a free spirit and he's willing to let some things go, but there's some things too that really humanize him. I guess we'll jump around a little bit, like, because in both versions he's the one that has to wind up saving Kalinka and Martin in the same way, where he's been handcuffed by the killer, and he uses a knife to cut off. Does he cut off his thumb or something like that? I
believe so. I don't think it shows it in
So he can get out of the handcuffs, and it's the same thing in both versions. But I like how when they're outside, she acknowledges. She says your hand, and he doesn't do the cool movie thing. He doesn't go, "It was necessary," or it's nothing. Like he freaks out.
Yeah.
Which I think makes him a little more human, because it comes to him. He's like, "Yes, that's right. I absolutely mutilated myself." Because to me, it does seem more realistic that, maybe later on, some other day, they can say to him, they're like, "Oh, and you wouldn't believe what he did," and he'd be like, "It was nothing." But in that moment, like right after it, he just like, I kind of like that reaction.
I don't know if I could do it. Ugh.
No, I don't know either. And I mean, like I said, I mean, it's a wonderful act of heroism, because I mean, yes, it's to save yourself too, but it's also to save your friends, because you think maybe if you had a little bit more time, you wouldn't have to do that if it was just yourself. But he didn't have time, because he knew he had to save his friends, and he does it. So yeah, it's a great heroic act, and I kind of like how in the original version, he doesn't just like play it cool. He's just like shows that he's really upset and disturbed by it in that moment, as I think 99% of people would be. Whereas, I mean, they don't actually. I don't think they say anything to James about it anyway. But it seems more like James would just sort of brush it off.
Right. Say something cool. I didn't need that thumb anyway.
Yeah. But just like Jens is a lot more direct in dealing with the bullies at the bar. Because like he doesn't like start this weird roundabout setup. He's just sort of talking like off the top of his head and stuff. Because like he really opens up with like he's like, "Hey, fish head," or something, or "fish face." He's just like, don't be bothering the nice people. And then he just sort of rants and raves until they've had enough of him and like attack him and stuff. Whereas James has this whole thing, like elaborate joke. They can feel it coming, but I guess out of like morbid curiosity, they're letting him go on about it and setting it all up and stuff. And so that's kind of quite different. Although they both sort of have the same result, where they just get rushed out of there, and they have the chat with Martin about how they've sort of changed lately, how they're not getting the same enjoyment out of life, etc. Although it is a little more ramped up in James's case, and does sort of set him up, as we said, as sort of an effective red herring, because he's talking about he's not feeling anything. Like he's not feeling anything. It's like, oh, that's the kind of thing a serial killer might say. It's like the only way I can feel things is by killing people or raping bodies and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean there is necrophilia in this, but they're later in sort of revealing that that's what's going on in this one. I think. I don't think it's until the part where just the corpse that's down there gets raped, and they think Martin did it. Is that the first time that in this version that it comes out that, because they weren't releasing it to the press. And the key difference when they're talking about the signature is in the remake we saw, he would take their eyes, and in this one he scalps them.
Right.
And that's just a cosmetic difference, but in both cases it's necrophilia. But I feel like they didn't actually talk about it or acknowledge it until later in the original.
Raping the bodies?
Yeah, like them actually mentioning it or talking about it. Doesn't it come in a little bit later in the original?
The original Watchman told him that, or the original guard told him that, somebody.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. I mean, like, I know that in both versions, the original said that, that had gone on and that had led to a guy getting fired. But I mean, the killer that's at large, isn't it a little bit later that you find out that he's doing that? At first, don't you just think he's just killing people? Maybe I'm wrong.
Never say that in the remake. I'm not sure.
Well, that's what I mean. In the remake, I don't think it actually is revealed that that's going on until he's framed, where one of the ones down in the basement is splayed up like that, and they think he did it. I think that's the first time they actually mention that the killer who's at large has been doing that to the bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Although it is true that in both versions, and in this version too, Joyce does say that she's, she has a regular customer that likes her to play dead.
Mm-hmm. I like how in the original, when the guard is telling him, the older guy is telling him that, oh yeah, he they covered it up or whatever, and he got fired, and he stood outside for weeks like a lovesick puppy or something like that.
Yeah,
I like that touch. Like he misses the corpses.
Yeah. So this one is set in Copenhagen, and at some medical institute. I guess they probably made it up and stuff, but it's funny. I mean, Copenhagen, and I think the other one's in California, but it doesn't really lead to any big differences there. They're just cities with people. There's not really any landmarks. Actually, there's one landmark, and isn't that the moment where you laughed? And then this is the moment where I laugh, because you're thinking, well, there's not really landmarks or anything to really no, there's nothing that really makes you think they're that different, except of course they're speaking Danish and stuff. But I love that where he's out with Jens, and they go to a landmark. There's a statue, and I'm like, that's a statue, and he says Hans Christian Andersen was an asshole. And I love that, and like that brings the whole Denmark thing home, because that's one of the things that Denmark is known for is Hans Christian Andersen. So that's one thing you get in this version you don't get in the other. You get to him saying how Hans Christian, what was it? He was just like, every time he masturbated, he would mark it. He would make a mark in his diary about it like that. But just the scene opens with them at the statue, and I'm trying to figure out who the statue is. My brain is working slowly, and he's just like, Hans Christian Andersen was an asshole, and I'm like, Denmark. I love that.
Did he break his beer bottle on his head at one point, or something?
Yeah, I think he throws it at it. I don't know if it hits it or not, but yeah, I think he throws his bottle at the statue.
And again, they have the same scene in the bar when the asshole guys are there causing trouble.
Mm-hmm. And, they're even worse to the girlfriends in this one. They grab at her and stuff like that.
You have a pretty mouth.
Yeah,
so you have a pretty
and
mouth.
I can't really figure out. It sounds, I guess some of the stuff Jen says to them is kind of racist, because he's trying to accuse them of being Pakis like Pakistani, or acting like Pakis. Right. I couldn't really figure it out. I think it has to be kind of a regional thing. It's maybe a slur the people in that part of the world were using at that time. I don't know. That was part of I couldn't really follow, but obviously he was trying to insult them. And I think, he delved into a bit of racism there, even though it was obviously just two white guys. Because he said something about how one of their names sounds like it's Pakistani or something like that.
Well, who knows what the translation was saying there, too. They may have been trying to just make it to something that you can understand.
Right. Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes in these films, as we said, a direct translation wouldn't work.
That's a big...
so they have to do something a little different.
Over in the UK, I know that's a pretty big racial slur, Pakis.
Yeah.
So maybe just trying to, relate it to that maybe, but I don't know. I guess everyone hates Pakis.
I guess so.
Denmark and the UK.
Well, yeah. Yeah, so he just sort of rants at them for a while, unlike James, who has sort of this whole setup to go on with.
He basically just comes out of the gate calling them queers and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, he doesn't. There is no lead up. It's just you guys are Pakis and queers.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
like in both versions. It's kind of remarkable they don't get like more beat up than they do. Like they only get like hit a couple times before they get out of there. Like in both versions, I feel like they get out way too easily.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like these guys would be really furious. Like these guys are picking on people for no reason. Now you're walking up to them and directly insulting them. I feel like they would have probably laid down a little bit more punishment in both versions. It's not a huge criticism, I'm just saying.
Did you notice he ordered a quadruple jack? Same.
Yeah, which I didn't even know was a thing you could do.
Quadruple. I've heard of double.
Jack. Yeah, that's what I mean. Sure.
Give me two doubles.
Yes, I mean, and I figure triple is something you probably say, but I feel like if you went into a bar and ordered quadruple, they'd be like, they I guess they do it, but they probably look at you like, what?
Give me a sextuplet. Just take like 12 shots and pour them in a large stein.
I guess that's lots of steins over in Europe for sure.
I just thought it was funny how, over here, drinking Jack Daniels is probably relatively normal, but I don't know. I guess it may be over there too.
Yeah. But as much as I think Jens and James have the differences, I think both Martins are very similar. There's not very much to take there. They're both young, but fairly, normal, inoffensive guys living their lives with their girlfriends. They have their one wacky friend who they're, devoted to, and it works out. But because like in both versions, it's like you get a little sense of it by his reaction when he tells him about like he saw like a prostitute waiting at the bus stop. He's like, but she didn't get on the bus. He's like, because she was a prostitute. He's like, maybe she was waiting for a different bus. And then later he says like, well, how do you know? And it's like, because I actually did, sleep with her and stuff. Both Martins, they aren't like upset or anything. They're just like, wow, like that's a mate. Like, what was that like? Like, like it's not something they would do themselves, but they're kind of impressed that they have a friend that did it, which is kind of interesting. And I like how both sort of had that kind of loose energy, because you see both of them just sort of like nodding their heads and rocking out to songs and stuff, which is, I think, true. Like a lot of people are like that when they're in situations where they know they're all by themselves.
Sure.
But even more so if it's not your home. Like I'm home alone all the time. So it doesn't feel novel or anything like that. But yes, if I had like that job, I kind of would, it would be a little different. It's like I'm all alone in this big place. It's like, oh, I can do it. And they're popping music. All the music he listens to is English.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of odd.
All the pop rock songs are English. I think by the same artist. But
something I thought was interesting is I think the music is what really dates the remake for me, because I remember a lot of those, a lot of the songs that were used were really popular, and around that period of time. That's why it's so. I mean, this one is almost more timeless because it doesn't have the factors that date it.
Yeah,
like the original.
Speaking of music, though, here's one thing that like makes it tougher, I think, for like non-Danish audiences, was the whole song thing that the killer switches. Now, in the original, they make it seem like he always has that song because it opens, and then we have another scene too where it's like, oh, this old man, it's like that's his signature song for killing people. Whereas in this, it seems pretty clear because first, this, as we said, this movie doesn't open with murder, so we don't see him operating before this time when he's killing Joyce. It's funny though, not to get sidetracked, but as much as they don't show some of the stuff in the original compared to the remake, I thought her getting stabbed was more grisly in this.
Yes.
Like, all this blood comes down. Her feet are just soaked in blood when he's stabbed. But anyway, when he's putting the knife in her.
The noises too that they made, it was really
like
disgusting.
The ripping,
like
ripping through her,
squishing, and it could really.
Yeah. But in this one, it just seems like she had something on her stereo, and he just flips through it until he finds a song he likes better. And I guess it's some sort of like, I don't know, is it supposed to be a children's song? So what's funny is like as audiences, like to us, I assume that's a well-known song, but it's not well-known to us. So it's so funny when you get to that reveal where she's alone with the cop and he starts whistling the song. Like bells don't go off in my head. Like that's the song. Like I can't even really remember it was the song. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah. I was the same way. I was like, if I hadn't seen the other one first, I wouldn't have even put that together.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's just
so
like,
you
oh,
didn't
it's
recognize that song either. That's what I was going to ask.
No,
if you,
I'm thinking maybe that's a popular song in that part of the world where all children learn it or something. It seems like it's probably that kind of thing, but it's not memorable to us. Just hearing it once, so it's funny. Then he whistles it. It's like, yeah, if I hadn't seen that parallel in the other movie, I don't know if I would have made the connection. And as I guessed when I said last week, one thing that Nick Nolte has over him is that Nick Nolte does the cool, weird whistling through his teeth, which I think is a lot weirder and more sinister than just sort of the normal whistling that this guy does and that most people do. And as I said, I don't even think that was scripted. I don't think they told Nick Nolte to whistle that way. I think that's just how Nick Nolte whistles, because that's him, which I think is great. I like little touches like that, but it's still okay.
Okay. I've got some information on the song here. It's I don't think I'm going to try to pronounce the title, but I can't pronounce some of those letters. But yeah. It's a Danish comic song. And,
so you get the feeling, it would be popular. People from there, they would recognize it instantly, I assume.
Sure, yeah, I'm sure they probably would recognize it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about all the pronunciation stuff. Like this movie's called Nattevagten, unless it's Nattevagten. I'm not sure about that E in there, right? I don't know if it's Nattevagten or Nattevagten.
And that's Night Guard. It's not Nightwatch.
Yeah, which he says at the end.
Yeah.
Because there's a few times in the original two, they both have the scenes in both versions where he talks about, if I was the movie hero, and after the part where he sees the body and then he tells them and they come back and the body's moved. He's just like, this is the part in the movie where the hero sees something and nobody believes him, but it was really there. But then they add, in a scene that's not in the original towards the end, where he just says, if they made a movie of this, they'd call it the Night Guard.
Which almost sounds cooler. I think I like that more than Nightwatch.
It seems less generic.
Yeah.
Like, Nightwatch is a lot of things. Like, if you type it into, like, Letterboxd or Flickchart or something, you'll get quite a few things coming up for Nightwatch. Besides both versions of this film, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Night Guard. But, I mean, technically that was what it was. It was a security guard.
Sure.
In both versions, but, small little detail. But, and I think I liked this Joyce a little better too. The prostitute.
I do too. They definitely made some interesting choices with her character in the remake.
And as we said about them showing more, like we were making fun of the Martin in the other movie, Ewan McGregor, but how easily he's going on the restaurant. Well, you can cut this Martin a little more slack because she gets a little more into it in the restaurant in this version, and it becomes a lot more obvious why the waiter asked them to leave, because in like full view of the restaurant, she starts to go down on him, which they do not do in the original. They're just like, the hand job is enough.
Oh yeah, she was 1 second in, and he was already going off.
Yeah, so that's pretty funny. So yeah, there's a few moments where they're showing a little bit more in this version, and that's another one. So you've got that. You've got the sex scene actually in the morgue, which I think is cool because it shows sort of how Martin's becoming a little screwed up by what he's going through, and of course it ties into the plot. How different is he? Like, how far off is he? He's having sex with somebody in a room full of bodies. How much further before he becomes like, the killer who wants to have sex with the dead body.
Right. Yeah. I think it definitely adds some depth to the character.
Yeah.
When it started, I was like, wait, I don't remember that in the remake. I'm sure it was too risque or something.
Yeah, I think it was too risque for a good guy. Like, I don't think it's like they couldn't show it in the movie, but it's like, this is supposed to be like our movie hero guy. Like, the audiences aren't going to get behind him. And I think that's some of the difference, and that is another, like I said, it's not as a big deal, but as when we were talking about the differences between the versions of Insomnia, where it's just like, oh, well, we don't want our hero to be that flawed. It's cool to have a flawed hero, but we can't have the main guy be a guy who's like well, not really heroic at all in the case of Stellan Skarsgård, where he's a cop who's good at his job, but it's also like he doesn't seem to really care about anything that he's doing. And as we said, one of the reasons it seems he's effective at his job is because he's almost able to think the way that like some of the criminals do and stuff like that. And the big difference they had to do with that whole scene where they're driving in the car, where in in the original, he's driving in the car with the young girl, remember the friend of the murdered girl, and he just sort of sees his opportunity. Now this is debatable. Either he sees his opportunity just to get some, or he sees his opportunity to put her off her guard and get some information out of her, and and he slides his hand onto her leg and then moves it up and stuff like that. Whereas in the version with Al Pacino, she sort of initiates like that maybe he could do something, and he's just like, nope. Like she said something like, it could go anywhere, and he's like, it's going no place, which I feel like is just telling the audience, it's like, don't worry, this is a good, American hero cop. He's got his flaws, but he's not that kind of guy. Like, I just feel like, I don't know. I mean, it's almost like sort of the same thing here. It's just like, well, we want the audiences to like Martin. We can't have him, screwing his girlfriend in the room with the corpses. It's too far.
Yeah, I like that in Insomnia though. I like that a lot in the original.
Yeah. Because it's a little business or pleasure, or maybe both type thing, right? Because as you said, it's like maybe he sees this as an opportunity to get her to talk a little more, but also, hey, he might as well enjoy it too. Which I think is pretty funny, because you get the feeling like that's the only way he really enjoys stuff anyway.
Yeah, well, he's a flawed guy, so
yeah, he's kind of twisted and stuff. Versus like Al Pacino, like, oh, he's got his problems and his flaws, but nope,
he just can't sleep.
Don't worry, everybody. Yeah,
he's not going to rape any teenagers. He just can't sleep. But yeah, I'm willing to bet.
We're just talking about fondling, rape, fondling. I know, slippery slope there.
Same thing. To
a lot of people, I guess.
No, I'm totally joking. Dimension Films is who put out the remake, so I'm willing to bet that a lot of the changes were probably notes directly from the Weinsteins.
Then you can see them saying, "Yeah, we can't have the hero do this," or
they saw the original and loved it, and they said, "We want to redo this, remake it exactly like you did the other one, but change this, this, and this."
Yeah, just shear a few things off.
Yeah.
And I get it, but
sure,
it's a little bit unfortunate, because I do think it loses a little something.
Well,
not to the extent that I think, as we said with the comparison we made with the other one with Insomnia, I don't think it loses as much. It's still very close, but it does lose a little bit.
Well, this has a little bit of a grittiness. I think that the remake is more polished, and I think it really helps. This one feels more thrilling to me. I feel like there's never really any real tension in the remake. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Just my personal opinion.
I mean, I think I know what you mean, but I do think that James's performance helps a little bit.
Sure.
Gives it a little bit of edge and stuff. Again, I don't prefer James to Jens, but I think it adds a little balance, because that movie had some stuff taken out of it, so they make James a little more edgy and stuff, so that balances it out a little bit more. But yeah, I know what you mean about polish. Like I said, when we were talking last week, it seemed like a lot of those movies from that era, they all had just a sort of, and this isn't necessarily a criticism, because I don't think it was done on purpose, but even though they had different actors and different plots and different directors, there still sort of was a lot of sameness to them, just the way things sort of looked and felt. Yeah. It was like it was something they couldn't get out of. This movie made a few years beforehand, and being foreign does feel a little different. It feels a little bit outside of it, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels more timeless to me. Like, it could have been, late 80s. It could have been, late 90s to me.
For the other one, it's like 1997. That's the, it's square in 97 is kind of how it feels.
When you drop like 3 Chemical Brothers tracks in there off their debut album, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of painfully obvious when it came out. And not a bad thing at all. It's just,
no,
it just dates it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the weird choices in the remake, you think, oh, okay, that's kind of an odd choice, but no, they just totally ripped it off from the original. Like, you know,
yeah,
get yourself a radio, like even down to the key system that they use, you know, for the timer, you know, when he would go into a certain room and you know, turn the key, like even that's almost exactly the same in both versions.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe if they'd made the building a little different, it could have, you know, felt a little bit different.
I'm willing to bet they were trying to be as close to that original as possible because they are so similar, you know?
Yeah. I mean, even the small characters are pretty much the same. Like the doctor that doesn't believe him. Super sarcastic jerk in both versions, where he's just, you know, giving him the business the whole time. Both versions are like that.
I mean, even the dialogue's the same a lot of the time. You know, take some sedatives. It'll this one, it says it'll make you sing hymns in splatter movies.
That's right.
And he said something similar. Brad Dourif said something similar in the remake. Something about singing hymns during whatever.
Yeah. And the cop, who was called Warmer in this version, I think he says the same thing that Nick Nolte says later when he's talking to him about it. He's like, oh, I think he's what is it? He's like a little too freely into the medication he prescribes, or something like that. I think he says that in both versions. Or he says something like, yeah, I think he's a little free with the medication there, or something like that.
Are you familiar with the Zine family?
That's right. But they're both Martin. He's Martin Bork in this, and isn't there a great moment where like the cop like just mocks his name and just goes like Bork, like says it really funny?
I'm sure.
I can't remember the context or anything like that, but he's just like, it's towards the end where it's already out, so like that, and he's just saying Martin Bork, and then he goes Martin Bork, like he puts like some weird like horrible accent on it, like he's mocking him. I don't know if that's a Danish thing or not, but he does do that, and I thought it was pretty funny. He just repeats Bork, but he puts a ton of accent on it. He goes Bork. It's funny. It's almost like he's gonna say borscht or something. Yes, it is. But yeah, Sophie Grabol as Kalinka Martins. I liked her, and yeah, as we said, it's not like she necessarily gives a better performance than Patricia Arquette. She just is given more to do. She gets a little bit extra scenes and stuff. She's an actress, and there's a part. Oh, here's another thing that I remember too. One of the first scenes when they're home that they wouldn't have in the American version is just him lying naked on the bed. There's a shot of him just lying naked on the bed, and there's no discretion shot where they cut it from thing. It's like the full thing. They don't dwell on it, but they show the whole thing. It's like, yeah, that's not going to be the American version. You're not going to see Ewan McGregor's business. Although you can. Sure although I read you can in some other movie, but I can't remember what movie.
Yeah, I think he's done some nudity.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of his films. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
He's one of those guys, I haven't seen it, but has like the James Woods reputation. It's like, it's fantastic, or something like that's what I've heard. It's like, it's something to see. So, yeah.
I like him a lot, man. He's had a hell of a career. I mean, the Star Wars shit aside.
I mean, you say Star Wars shit, but he's a really great Obi-Wan.
Well, he's the best thing in the movie, I mean, I think. But
he's definitely the best thing in the first one. And I mean, I guess he's the best thing in the second one, at least not much. There's nothing good about the second one. I mean,
I just can't
not to get this into a Star Wars thing, people, but I cannot tell you how much I hate Attack of the Clones. That's the one I hate.
I don't know. I don't like any of them at all. And I've only seen them like the one time, and that's all I care to.
And I'm kind of soft on the third one, because, I mean, yeah, the third one's not great either, but it does what it's supposed to do. Like, not great, but it does do what it's supposed to do, and they have their fight. But anyway, that whole thing.
Well, I think Natalie Portman as the eye candy in Attack of the Clones is probably the best part of that movie.
Oh, man, here's another parallel of Danish to American. So I was looking up Sophie Grabel, who is in this movie, and then they made an American remake. She plays Sarah Lund in the original Danish version of The Killing.
Oh, wow.
And then, you know, then they made Sarah Linden in the American version. So
yeah, I haven't seen either.
I watched the first season of The Killing. It is very good. I've never seen the Danish version. I'd like to.
Oh,
but
man,
the first season at least was set in the American version is set in Seattle. It's very good, but yeah, so it's another Danish to American thing, and she's in 2 of them at least. But yeah, so she had the lead in that, so that was a big deal. So yeah, so she obviously went on.
Have you ever seen The Bridge?
No, it's kind of a similar setup, though. I heard.
Yeah, the Bridge is supposed to be really good. I've got the set. I just haven't watched it yet.
Yeah,
and I think they remade that in America too. Shocker.
Yeah, what's funny is there was this show, like my mom liked a lot of those shows, and I was recommending one to her. And what was funny was when I recommended another to her, I didn't realize that was the original version of it. Like, I just thought it was 2 similar shows. I didn't know that one was the other. Because what it was, hold on, just so I can get my things straight here. Yeah. Was that she was watching Grace Point. And I said, if you like that, there's a show called Broadchurch. It's pretty good. I didn't know Grace Point was the remake of Broadchurch.
Wow, I didn't know they remade Broadchurch.
Yeah, actually, in Grace Point, they use the same guy too.
David Tennant.
Yeah, David Tennant is also the main guy in Grace Point.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But what's funny is I'd seen probably 6 or 7 episodes of Broadchurch and thought it was pretty good. I hadn't seen any Grace Point because I would have recognized the guy, but I sort of knew a little bit what it was about, and I knew she was watching. And I was like, if you like that, you might like Broadchurch. And then I found out, oh, well, if they're the same thing, more or less. Yeah. We got both starring David Tennant. Hey, and Nick Nolte's in Grace Point, so that brings it on home.
Hey, there you go. Full circle.
Full circle, people. But yeah, Denmark, for a small country, has produced some memorable stuff.
Oh yeah, man, they put out some great movies. That's Nicholas Winding Refn.
Oh yeah, he's the man these days, right?
I've been watching his stuff for years before he was like a household name, like Pusher. That was like 20 years ago, you know.
Yeah, he's one of the best there is when it comes to like capturing like street stuff.
Oh,
he's
man.
kind of like, I guess what like Scorsese or somebody would have had a reputation for early in their career.
So that's a good comparison.
Because they both sort of had this good feel of sort of like what kind of people, in those positions, in those gritty urban areas, what their lives are really like and stuff like that. But yeah. We'll have to do one of his movies for this show, I think. We should.
Sure, man. Pick one. I love them all.
Yeah, probably something from earlier, since people are more familiar with him now. I mean, obviously there are the Pusher movies.
See if I don't think I've seen Bleeder from '99. I don't think I can find that one.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the one he did between Pusher 1 and Pusher 2.
Mads Mikkelsen's in that one too.
Oh yeah,
made Mads Mikkelsen's career.
Yeah, he's like another. I really like him. I mean, I think a lot of people do. Too. And I mean, he is a good Hannibal in that Hannibal show and stuff. But
he is.
I
mean, considering what shoes that are to fill,
Yeah, I was thinking of the short list of Danish films I've seen, and he's in like 4 of them.
Yeah, he's in quite a few of the ones I've seen too.
The last one I think I saw was the Western one. The something. Can't think of what it's called. It's a very by the numbers type of revenge Western, but it is about like Danish settlers in particular, basically. And he's the main guy. He gets like revenge on this gang.
Not The Hunt.
No, that's not it. I'll find it.
The Hunt's really good too, man. That's like a heartbreaking film.
I haven't seen that one.
It's good. I'm sure they've remade it in America.
Sounds familiar, but I mean, it sounds like a lot of things. But what's it called? The Salvation. It came out in 2014.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
It's not amazing, but it's definitely worth seeing, though. It's very predictable, sort of straightforward revenge type movie where he basically has to take on this gang of outlaws, but it's still really well done and really enjoyable and stuff. That's like the last movie I think he starred in, actually, where he was the star.
Well, he's in the now Star Wars, right?
Yeah, he and I like that. I mean, I know I'm not saying Rogue One is great, but one thing I liked about Rogue One was it gave an opportunity for a guy like Mads Mikkelsen, a guy like Donnie Yen. Like, I like seeing them in the Star Wars universe. They're good, cool actors. But yeah, that's the whole thing. But yeah, The Hunt.
You know, they went with Donnie Yen because I think Jet Li wanted too much money.
Oh, Jet.
Isn't that stupid?
Shouldn't have gotten greedy, Jet.
I mean, I couldn't, you know, I would rather the way it is than see Jet Li in there. Even though I like Jet Li a lot.
I like Jet Li too, but I think, at least for the character they wound up with, Donnie Yen's better at being that sort of, you know, calm, collected character. That was never really Jet Li's thing. Speaking of Jet Li, I want to see, for the longest time I had it on my Netflix, and now it's not on anymore, was like the one drama he did. What was it, like Ocean something Ocean? It's just, he doesn't throw a single kicker punch in the movie. It's just like a serious drama. I think he's got like a kid with some like disease or something like that.
Wow.
And I was always really interested in seeing it. And for the longest time, it was on Netflix, and I had it on the list, and it's been gone for a long time now,
though. With a guy like him, you probably have to work for like 35, 40 years in film to get an opportunity to.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Kung Fu movie.
That's what I mean. He'd been doing movies since the early 80s, and then in 2010, the same year, and I assume with his Expendables money, he did Ocean Heaven, which is just a completely straightforward drama with him in the lead. So I don't know. Maybe his acting in it is really good. I don't know.
Got a pretty good rating on IMDb.
Yeah. Oh, it has. Oh, Taiwanese actress Gui Lun Mei. Oh, I love her. I saw her in this really schmaltzy movie called Secret, which had Jay Chu, if you might remember him. He was a Taiwanese pop star who was sort of big over here for a while. He got to play Kato in the Green Hornet movie.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a movie I watched with my girlfriend at the time. It's just a cutesy little fantasy type movie where like this girl goes to like this academy for music students, and it's just full of prodigies. It's like one of the movies that makes people like me sick because it's just full of like crazy like piano prodigy kids and stuff like that. And there's this great part too, like where it's like one of the new kids, they almost have like a weird piano battle, and like all the kids gather around for it. And there's a kid like, and I'm just like, and I keep saying to her, I'm like, this is like nobody would do this in real life. But anyway, but the whole thing was like, so at the school, the boy meets this mysterious girl, and he's like starts to like fall in love with her and stuff like that. And anyway, and the secret, and she says she has a secret, and big spoilers for people who are interested. The secret is like, it's really weird. I don't know if she's dead, but she's from the past. Like she went to the school like in the 70s or something, and this is that 70s version of herself that's sort of trapped in the school or something. I can't remember. Anyway, it's not really a great movie, but it's just but she's really cute and cool in it, and I guess she's in Ocean Heaven, which is cool. Very, very beautiful actress. Oh, Ocean Heaven, filmed in Qingdao. That's where that girlfriend, that's where she was from, Qingdao. But anyway, that actress, yeah, her name.
Is that in China?
Qingdao, yeah, it's a port city. It's up in the northeast. It's funny. It's like not even a city you hear about, but because it's in China, it has like 8 million people in it.
It's like not even large compared to there.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not. You don't really think of it and stuff like that, but it's huge, of course. Yeah. But
quaint little port city.
But yeah, Gui Lun Mei. Yeah. Okay. So she's about my age. Because yeah, Secret, because she would have been pretty young back then. Secret was like 2004, so you know she's in her mid-30s now, but really cute, cool actress. But she hasn't done any non sort of Chinese movies, and most of her movies are tied into Taiwan. Which I always wonder about. You know, China and Taiwan have such an odd, strange relationship, but then you have like Taiwanese actors and actresses that obviously are a big part of the Chinese film industry. Like is that uncomfortable? Do they just not talk about it? Like, I don't know. You know, what do you do?
That's a
like,
good question.
You know, you go to the Olympics and it's like, here's the country of Taiwan. And then the country of China is just like, we don't recognize them as their own country. We do not recognize their government. What are they doing? They should be flying our flag. They shouldn't have their own entrance here. And we're just like, oh, shut up, China. Just be cool about this. You know, I don't know.
Just be cool and have your 10-year-old girls on the gymnastics team.
Yep. Well, they'll win. They win plenty of medals.
I want to see those birth certificates. You remember, not this past Olympics, but the one before? Man, they dominated, and gosh, they looked so young, ridiculously young. I mean, they were like, you know,
it's like they work every generation harder than the last.
3 feet
well, they
tall.
hosted 2008. That was in Beijing.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was.
Man, whenever you're the host nation, you have a lot of pressure to like win medals.
Yeah, why is that? Why does the host nation always do really well? I guess not always, but
it's because they just feel a lot of pressure to like those world spotlights on us. So we can't just put on a good Olympics. We actually have to show up and stuff like that. That's why, like, I don't know if Canada will ever top the 2010 Olympics. Like, we are a country that, like, you know, wins medals here and there, and so like, we're not a big thing. But in 2010, like, not only are we doing the ones that I care about, which was both golds in men's hockey and both golds in women's hockey, both golds in men's curling and women's. That's what I care about. But they won other stuff. Like 2010, we didn't lead in medals, but we were like 4th or something in medals, and we led in golds, which is just crazy. I mean, conversely, in 1976 in Montreal, which I think was the first time a Canadian city hosted the Olympics, like, we won nothing.
Oh, really?
Like, nothing. And it was also a huge debacle, and Montreal, the city, lost a ton of money. Like, I don't know if they would have, you know, made more money if we won medals. I don't know how it works, but I just mean it's not remembered as really a good, memorable Canadian moment. We didn't win any medals. Now, this was a Summer Olympics, not a winter. Obviously, winter's more our sport, more our speed anyway, too. But still, there's a lot of events in summer. You think we'd win some. I mean, nowadays, we do win medals and stuff. But yeah, so there's always pressure. Plus, you know, China has almost, you know, a cold war going on, you know, with the rest of the world, almost. Not quite, but you know how, like, the Olympics, it was always the U.S. and the Soviets. Part of showing each other up was who was winning more medals and stuff. Like, it feels kind of like China's kind of doing that itself now.
To everyone, they're showing
to everyone, which they can do
Sure.
with like their crazy population and crazy government and stuff like that.
They would just get their heads out of their asses. They could definitely dominate everything.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. What's funny is, like, remember that? I mean, I don't remember it because I'm not old enough, but you know, I've watched enough movies and stuff from like the early to mid '80s, even going to almost late '80s. That moment where, like, Western culture was sure Japan was taking over the world, where all the corporations were going to be Japanese and everything was like foreshadowing. Like, even if you watch like Blade Runner seems to suggest that Japan is going to be like a massive power in the future. And there's a few things like that. Like, I remember even in the 90s, even though it was slowing down by then, like the comic book person in me coming out, but one of the most 90s series you can imagine was the Marvel 2099 line, where, you know, that imagined future, stuff like that. And in the future version of like Stark Industries was Stark Fujikawa. It was just like, Tony Stark is still a power, but he had to merge with the Japanese because they're so powerful. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in like that mid 80s range where there was stuff where it's like people were just assuming, and their economy was booming. The Japanese economy was booming. It was, you know, it was when at the late 70s was when their products started to get introduced over here. And by the 80s, it's just like, oh, wow, they make cars and TVs and stuff that's way better than what we make over here, you know, and all this stuff. There's even a little bit of it in like the Die Hard movie.
Sure.
And stuff like that.
I think, you know, the gas crisis probably helped that quite a bit with, and then you know,
Michael Crichton wrote Rising Sun, which is just basically about sort of the height of that. Like, there's a murder going on, but a lot of, you know, how Michael Crichton writes, he writes about trends and what's going on. And he wrote a lot about, you know, Japan's economic takeover of the world at the time. So, and then of course it didn't work out that way. But you have to think with China, it's a little different because of their massive population and the way their government does things. But that's a whole thing.
Well, I still think Japan's probably top of the line, like technology-wise.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, at least consumer products.
I know. I mean, there's plenty of made in China out there, but that doesn't mean good. It just means that's what it is. It's made in China, sure. Everything's made in China because it's cheaper and easier to get.
Or Japanese-owned company made in China.
Oh yeah, Bleeder's got Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah, Bleeder might be a good one to try to track down for the future because I haven't seen it either.
Cool. Yeah.
And as we said, Nicholas Winding, and is it Winding or Winding?
I'm not sure. I've always heard it say Winding, but I
okay,
completely wrong.
Yeah, he's a really cool director. I mean, he got on everybody's radar, of course, for the
Drive.
The Drive movie, yeah.
Which was actually one I didn't come around to until later. I saw it in the theater, and it was just really pumped up to me by someone else before I saw it, and I just was kind of underwhelmed.
I like it, but I've always liked The Driver a lot, and I just feel like, this is kind of like a modern, updated version of The Driver, which is fine. And it's got its own style. It's not like it's just ripping it off and stuff, but it's just something I can't really separate them. And when it comes down to it, I like The Driver more.
It's very stylistic, and once you get beyond that, I think it's a really good movie. I think the style aspects are what got it recognized, but it's actually a well-made movie too.
Yeah.
You still see douchebags rocking that scorpion jacket.
Yeah. I listened to the song from that just today on a mix I have on YouTube, the Real Hero song.
Yeah, I was listening to it recently too. It's a good soundtrack.
Oh yeah, like it's cool. Like I don't know what you call that nowadays. It's kind of new wavy, but I guess it's not really new wave. But stuff that reminds you of the new wave. Like it's
Dark Scent or something like that.
God, seriously? Yeah.
It's got a name. Yeah.
I'm sure it does. Yeah. Oh, and the last thing he did was Neon Demon, which was an interesting movie, which has a scene of necrophilia.
It does.
As performed by a woman. What sucks is I saw an entire movie years ago on CBC and it was all about a woman who was a necrophiliac and it had several scenes of her having sex with bodies, men and women. And I cannot think of the name of the film because I wanted to mention it.
How does she have? Does she? I guess it's just the rigor mortis. With
the men, yeah.
She could sit on it, or
she just sort of sets them up.
Curiosity. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's a lot easier for a man, I guess, to be a necrophiliac.
Yes, it definitely is. But, I guess it depends on what your goals are.
It's still in the realm of what the movie we're talking about.
It kind of blows my mind that he directed one of the Agatha Christie movies, like the newer series that they were doing. He did one of the Marples from 2009. He directed Nemesis. Really? I have no idea why. I mean, it's good. I've even seen that. I've seen that version, and it's good. But I wonder how he wound up with that job, considering it's that's very British, as you might imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's plenty of American actors and stuff, and people from other places that get involved, but usually the directors and producers and stuff, British. It's kind of like a James Bond type thing. The Agatha Christie, it's like keep it British. So it's kind of interesting. But maybe more foreign directors have directed those than I know, because it's not really like I usually think about the directors for those thing up in here. And I remember I knew that from before. I forgot. But yeah, he did Nemesis in 2009, so just a little bit before Drive. I know that it's funny because Drive also had Ryan Gosling, but I know our friend Pizzell also really liked Only God Forgives, which is the next one that he did, which also had Ryan Gosling and stuff. And I had a bunch of opportunities to watch that and just never got around to it. I know it's like weird. It's like
it's very stylistic again, but I don't know, that one's not as well rated as Drive is. I thought it was okay.
Drive's the big one.
I want to watch it again, but yeah, it's just got some weird stuff in there.
Yeah, it's in Bangkok, so that sounds about right.
Yeah, it's whoever plays, I think, Ryan Gosling's mom in the movie.
Yeah, she's like some crime boss.
They have a real weird relationship, and it's just, yeah, I'd like to watch it again. It's been a little while since I've seen it. Ryan Gosling actually directed a movie that felt really similar to some stuff that Refn has done. What was it called? Let's see. He wasn't even in it, I don't think. Lost River?
I don't know.
2014.
I may have heard of it, but I definitely didn't see it, that's for sure. I saw The Place Among the Pines, or whatever it's called, or Beyond the Pines. Did you see that?
Yeah. What'd you think?
I like how it wasn't what anybody expected. Like, it sets up like a completely different story than you're expecting.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, but at the same time, I'm just thinking this is a little too close to kind of like Drive, in a way. He's doing like getaways from a bank. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stylistically very different from Drive, obviously. I don't know. It's sort of Ryan Gosling's one of those guys who can do no wrong now. Like, being in something like La La Land only increases his profile. It doesn't bring it down, despite the fact that he can't sing or anything.
Have you seen The Nice Guys yet?
Yeah, I was a little let down. Like, it's not bad.
Were you? Oh, okay.
You know, it's definitely better than most movies that come out. I don't know. I didn't dislike it or anything. It just, I don't know. I wanted a bit more from it, I guess. It's not like there was anything bad about it. There definitely wasn't. You know, cool, sort of quirky characters, good chemistry with Russell Crowe.
Which I don't generally like Russell Crowe, so it's kind of odd that I like that movie as much as I do.
Yeah, I liked Russell Crowe before he became like famous. Like, I feel like Gladiator ruined him.
So the past like 20 years.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, it was kind of a neat role for him. More low key, more a little bit humorous. Russell Crowe, I don't think, is a guy that has much of a sense of humor.
Fighting around the world.
Yeah, it's hard to separate him from that too.
I can't think about him and not think about that.
But yeah, no, anytime he just seems like a guy that sort of takes himself too seriously. Especially because he thinks he has musical talent, which he doesn't have. And I hate to think that, like, part of the reason is, like, because he's been, like, I don't think it was on purpose, but he's been encouraged by one of his friends. There's a very famous band in Canada from Newfoundland called Great Big Sea. And they sort of bridge the gap because they do sort of, like, some of that Newfoundland music, like, you know, sea shanties and stuff like that, but they like kind of pop it up, right? So, like, look up any of their stuff. It's very catchy and cool, and it's very Newfoundland, and they're very popular. They're huge. Anyway, the lead guy in that, I don't know what it was he's in that 2010 movie Robin Hood, which I hate. I hate that Robin Hood with Russell Crowe. Anyway, he played. Well, it's awful. But in that movie, remember how in most stories in the band, there's a music guy, like there's a guy with a lute or something. There's some sort of bard. Anyway, in this version, that guy, I can't remember his name, I think it's Doyle. Everybody from Newfoundland's a Doyle. But anyway, he plays in that, and they met on set, and I guess they bonded over their like love of music and stuff like that. And he's like helped him like produce some of his albums. I'm like, oh, why are you encouraging Russell Crowe? But of course, it makes perfect sense. I mean, Russell Crowe's this massive star, like, you know, so I understand why he would. I'm just thinking. But yeah, Great Big Sea are pretty cool. I saw them live years and years ago. I guess they're still together. They've been around a long time. Back in their early days, when they only had like one album, they have a very famous cover of "It's the End of the World as We Know It," because they sang it even faster. It's like twice as fast, and man, like, it takes talent to pull that off.
I'm sure.
But yeah, they're a fun band. Like, I'm not really into that stuff, but I like how they do it. Yeah, they've got a lot of catchy, as we said, sort of traditional Newfoundland type songs. The old black rum's got a hold on me, like the dog wrapped around my leg. I don't know. It's hard to describe their music to people that don't know it, but look it up sometime. By C, it's S-E-A. Okay. But yeah, so anyway, he somehow wound up in that movie, and they're like, oh, you have kind of the look. And he has a few lines in the movie, and I guess he and Russell Crowe became sort of friends on set because they both liked music and stuff. Cool. And then, yeah, and it sort of led to him inadvertently like helping Russell Crowe's terrible music career.
Well, I was going to say he was in Les Miserables, so.
Yeah, and he can't sing. Like, I have to listen to him sing. My favorite song in Les Miserables is Stars, and hearing him sing it makes me upset. And I really still like that version. I really like the chances they made, but he should not be there.
He's actually singing, right? Or is it dubbed by someone else?
It's absolutely him. I mean, if they dubbed it, what would be the point? Because it does not sound good.
Can Hugh Jackman sing? I mean,
a hell of a lot better than him.
Why did they get people that are not known for their singing abilities to do?
Well, see, they didn't with Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman, look him up. He has done a ton of musical stuff.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, they even had a joke on it on like Saturday Night Live once. I remember they had somebody playing him. He's just like how he's like the simultaneously the most gay and least gay actor at the same time because he's Wolverine, but he also does all these like show tune stuff and stuff like that, particularly in Australia.
That's fun.
So yeah, he's at least a decent singer. But no, he has an extensive musical career, lots of singing. I'm not saying he's a great singer, but
what about Sacha Baron Cohen?
Yeah, he's fine for what it is. Really? Like if you know the role, like I don't know if you know the musical. Do you know the musical?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, there's this couple called the Thénardiers, and he's an innkeep and his wife, and the whole thing is they're just crooks. They're total crooks. Off. That's it in the original novel too, and they have a song called "Master of the House," which is all about how they delight in ripping everybody off. And even though it's set in France and everything like that, ever since the original version in the '80s, it's always been done like a British cast, so they're just Cockney as hell. So it's just basically him sort of singing with a Cockney accent, and it's what's her name is his wife, Helena Bonham Carter. Yeah, they're actually pretty good for what they do, because. Again, if you know the song, it's not the type of song that would really tax somebody to be a great vocalist. Like, that was actually good casting.
I just remember George from Seinfeld singing "Master of the House."
Yeah, he had "Master of the House" in his head afterwards. That's my favorite. That's my favorite musical by far, beyond anything. I love it, love it, love it. And I love the novel too, but I just love it. It breaks my heart I never got to see it. I was in New York, but it wasn't playing. Hell, I'll go to London. I'll go to London to see if I have to, but yeah.
I bet that would be what, $500 to see. I don't have any idea what those cost.
I don't know, but probably a lot. Yeah. I mean, I saw Book of Mormon, and that cost a shitload.
Really?
I mean, it was great. I loved it. Oh, so good.
I've seen I think the film version of it.
Yeah, no, Book of Mormon. That was why I went. It was to see Book of Mormon. It was pretty amazing, and I fell out of a fairly small theater, but it was just fantastic. Like, even beyond my expectations. Like, I went in, knowing some stuff about it and liking it and stuff, and it was even better. So good. But yeah, I love Les Mis. But no, I mean, no, for the most part, they had good actors that could sing pretty well. It's Russell Crowe that sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's too bad because I really like Javert. Speaking of versions and stuff, it's funny, like, as much as it's fun, we talked about how the Dark Tower movie's probably going to be crap because they're condensing so much into one little movie. I'm kind of surprised how good, even though, like, it's not great or anything, how at least decent the 1998 version of Les Mis is, considering it's just like an ordinary 2-hour movie. And they completely changed the ending. And yet they still do a lot of things really well, and I really appreciate it. I even own it on DVD. Have you ever seen that version? It's got
Liam Neeson. Okay.
Liam Neeson is Jean Valjean, and Jeffrey Rush he's kind of what I picture now. Honestly, he's so good as Javert and stuff. I think Uma Thurman's in there, and Claire Danes when she was still cute. I mean, what's funny is, like, that's just sort of an ordinary, like, 2-hour movie from a massive novel, like, meaning they have to eliminate and cut out a ton of stuff.
Right.
But I still kind of like it. I still have a soft spot for it. I think it's actually pretty good. And I like that they give it a happy ending. Like, in that, spoilers, like, Jean Valjean actually lives, which makes me happy. Because one thing about Les Mis is, like, almost everybody dies. And it's notable also because, like, the main character, Jean Valjean, he does die. Although he does sort of die happy. Like, he gets, like, some redemption. Like, it's not exactly that tragic. But I kind of like the 98 version where, like, it just sort of ends with him just, like, walking and smiling because he's just realizing he's finally sort of free because, I don't know, the story, but Jean Valjean has been in prison for many, 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 many years. He's a big part of it. Anyway, I can babble on about it forever. It's one of my favorite books. It's a super, super long book, but it's just one of my favorite stories, which is why I like it in almost any sort of version that people do, I guess. But, and the musical is interesting because I'm so used to, I've heard, like, the original million times. I, like, know every inflection and beat. So it was kind of interesting when they did this movie how vocally they sometimes changed up to some of the lines in the songs and stuff like that. And sometimes, and some of the actors, it's funny, you know, some of the actors that weren't as comfortable singing, they would just sometimes like kind of talk the line, even though it was supposed to be a sung line. But probably the person that impressed me the most as a singer in that was, you know, Catwoman.
Sharon Stone? No.
No, Sharon Stone. No. Dark-haired girl.
Halle Berry? No.
No, a better Catwoman.
Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer.
She's too old. Although Michelle Pfeiffer can sing, although she's in one of the worst musicals of all time, she stars in Grease 2.
Oh, Uma
which
Thurman?
You should see. No, Uma Thurman can sing, and actually, it's funny, you have the same role. In the 98 non-musical version, Uma Thurman plays Fantine. It's the woman who plays Fantine. And she is in, I can't even think, I'm completely blanking on every movie she's ever done besides.
Oh, you're talking about Anne Hathaway?
Yes, Anne Hathaway. Okay. I was really impressed by what a good singer she is. I didn't know. I had no idea, but she's a very, very good singer.
Yeah, I like her a lot. I think she's made some bad choices as far as the roles she takes, but I mean, I'm sure it's worked out well for her. Just my personal opinion of the movies.
I've liked her for a long time because actually I liked the first. This is going to sound ridiculous, but it's true. I like the first Princess Diaries movie. I like that movie, and she's the star of that.
Yeah.
The second is one of those sequels that just completely destroys everything. Like, I don't know why they would do that. Yeah, like everything that was good and cool about the first one, they just completely ruined in the second. Like, but yeah, so that's when she was quite young. You know, she's only about a year older than me, so you know. But yeah, so I've liked her pretty much ever since then. And I have a soft spot too because she does. She's one of the English voices in the English version of The Cat Returns, which isn't a great. It's one of the lesser Studio Ghibli movies, but still a Studio Ghibli movie, and I like it. She does a voice in that, so I kind of have a soft spot for that. So always liked her in those.
And she's done a lot of good stuff. Like Rachel Getting Married's good.
Haven't seen it.
It's a drama, but I like it a lot.
I mean, that Get Smart movie wasn't good, but she kind of was a good choice to be Agent 99. I thought
she did a film in 2005 called Havoc that I liked quite a bit. It's just kind of.
Haven't seen that either. No, I haven't seen that either.
She gets nude in it, so.
Yeah, there's some movie where her and Jake Gyllenhaal are like nude the whole time. I thought that was her. Love and Other Drugs, yeah. Love and Other Drugs, she and Jake Gyllenhaal are like nude for like 30% of the movie.
Really? See, I don't know that I've seen that one.
Oh, now I remember the thing. I was going to say, there is something I really didn't like her in, and now I found it. It's Interstellar. I cannot stand her in Interstellar. I feel like she just spends the whole time like wide-eyed and gaping at the camera. Like,
did she play the daughter? The daughter grown up? No.
She just played one of the other astronauts or whoever they are, I guess. Because the daughter grown up was one of my favorite actresses, Jessica Chastain, who I don't think can give a bad performance. I love her that much. Really like Jessica Chastain.
I do too.
Speaking of her, like I said, I'd like you to see that. What is it? A Violent or A Most Violent Year, or whatever it's called. I'd like to know what you think of that. I think it's a pretty cool, interesting movie. It wasn't what I wanted at the time. I was sort of disappointed, but when I had time to think about it, I kind of thought, like, what a good movie it is. And she's in that, and she's really, really good in it.
Oh, Oscar Isaac, yeah. I need to see that. It's on my list.
Yeah. But, as far as Anne Hathaway goes, I've liked her in everything I've seen except for Interstellar.
I mean, I thought she was an okay Catwoman, considering I think that movie had a lot of problems, but she wasn't one of them.
Yeah, she was one of the things I had concerns about going in, and then she, did a good job, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, was hardly in the movie, really, but kind of underused, I think.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm not a huge fan of that movie.
I'm more forgiving of that movie than most. My only problem is I just don't like having an ending. It has an ending, and I don't like that.
Yeah, that's true. I don't dislike it at all. I think it gets a lot of hate.
Oh no, I absolutely don't dislike. Yeah, I think so too. I think it gets a ton of hate, and I don't get it.
But
part of me just feels like, and I mean, I'll sound hypocritical because I know how hard I can be on movies, especially sequels. But I just feel like sequels just have no chance nowadays. Like there's no such thing as them ever maintaining a standard that everyone's going to be okay with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And I mean, it makes a certain amount of sense when we're talking about like sequels that have come out like way later, because it's true. Like, yeah, you watch Alien and Aliens, it's like, wow, Aliens was a really good sequel, and now years later they keep trying and they can't do it. And I think, well, yeah, that's not us being cynical. That's just sort of life. But yeah, I just feel like nowadays a trilogy like the Dark Knight trilogy comes out, and it's just like it's always like, I don't know, people get overexcited about one or two, but once we get to the end, they're all like, oh, they blew it. Like, aren't there any good trilogies? Nobody thinks there's good trilogies? Maybe The Matrix ruined it,
I think
The Matrix was such a bad trilogy that maybe people didn't believe in them anymore. Maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Well, they still follow that same formula with making multiple sequels at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the first times I'd ever heard of it.
Yeah, which never seems to work out. Didn't you think it was a good idea at the time? I thought it was a great idea. I was like, oh, awesome,
I'm sure
we'll get to see them within I was happy. I was like, oh, yeah, Matrix 2 is going to come out, and they're shooting the other one. So after we see it, only a few months, and then we'll see the third one. Like, I was happy. I was pumped, man. I was like, yeah, that's good that they're doing that.
Afterwards, part 2 wasn't shit. I would have been more excited to see part 3. But...
Well, yeah, exactly. By the time I saw part 2, it all fell apart. Part 2 is better than part 3. Part 2 at least still has some likable things in it. I hate part 3 more than life itself.
I've blocked them out. I probably need to watch them again, but
I haven't watched them in years and years and years. What's funny is like I kind of owe it to myself to watch The Matrix, the original, like on a Blu-ray or something, and I haven't.
I tell you what's the best thing about that is the Animatrix. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah, that was something also. I don't know how we would do it exactly, but I wanted to sort of maybe address on the show wasn't it weird how The Matrix was a big part of it? There was a period from about 98 to 2004 where Hollywood kind of flirted with the idea of using anime style like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then even maybe leading to some of these crossovers. Like Hollywood and anime has always had a really weird, strange relationship for the most part that's never really produced anything good or memorable. I was thinking about it because I was reading an article that sort of talked a little about the failings of, I haven't seen it yet, I will out of curiosity, of the Ghost in the Shell movie. Because it's like, oh, here we're all getting excited again. Like, here's something based on an anime and how it, it can't really work or translate. And it's true. And I hadn't even thought about it, that like it seemed like, not even necessarily intentionally, but in 98, Blade came out. And for people like me, you watch Blade and you're like, holy shit, this is like an anime, like in live action.
Yeah.
And then for the next few years, you saw that style a bit. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And then by the mid-2000s, it was gone.
Well, Kill Bill has got...
And that's what I mean. And then in the interval, you had Kill Bill actually having an anime sequence in it, and you had the Animatrix, which was, a lot of people think, was sort of the saving grace of the series because of the sequels being such letdowns and stuff. So in both those cases, you had audiences that weren't necessarily familiar with anime getting exposed to some of it and liking it. And, yeah. But I wouldn't mind talking about that period or some of the movies from there and stuff, and just some of the things that actually did well or some of the things that couldn't work and stuff like that, because it is really interesting, and obviously I'm an anime fan. So we'll have to give that some thought about how we could tackle something like that.
Can you think of any other examples?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
I could at the time. It's amazing how...
Did you ever see any of the Aeon Flux cartoon? Or, I guess, Animatrix?
Yeah, I saw the Aeon Flux cartoon. Which, wasn't that a European cartoon? Wasn't that like a European cartoon in imitation of anime?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it was, but it came on this thing called Liquid Television here in the States in the early 90s on MTV.
Yeah, I think it would have been for me. I think it was when Teletoon, when our Cartoon Network first got introduced. This would have been around 98.
Oh, really?
It was one of the shows they would show late night, and I watched a bit of it. And I'm fairly certain it's actually a European cartoon. I'm just going to double check.
It was just, I liked the style a lot. It was really cool looking.
I don't know. It's American. It was created by an American. I always thought it was. Huh. Yeah. I always thought it was European for some reason. Yeah, but so yeah, it's an American show, but done in like an anime style. I saw like episodes out of order. I couldn't even tell you what it was about. Like, you know, she runs around on rooftops, some sort of crazy oppressive society. I know that much. I always thought the animation looked really European, but I'm wrong there. It was an American one. Man, I didn't know
whatever it is.
I didn't know it was as old as it is either. See, I saw it towards the end of the 90s, but it actually ran from 91 to 95. I had no idea. I didn't see it until years after it was over.
Well, see, Liquid Television was a 30-minute show that had a lot of cartoons, you know, mingled together. So
I'm assuming that's where like the Max was on and stuff.
Yeah,
because we used to get we used to get MTV's oddities, and it would be the Max and the Head, and I watched those.
Yeah, I like
which I'm guessing sort of must have spawned from that.
Probably, yeah. I think that was a little bit later.
Yeah. So I never got Liquid Television, but I got like shows that had been part of it. Like it wasn't presented that way, because obviously I got Beavis and Butthead, but it's kind of the start of it. It's funny, like maybe I was always destined to like be a night person, but that was really the start of me being a night person. Was like the mid '90s, staying up late, having sleepovers with Brian and my friends and stuff, and I was watching like Beavis and Butthead.
Oh yeah, me too.
And then it led into all the other late night shenanigans, as we talked about even on this show. Me watching like Showcase and Bravo for stuff like with nudity and stuff like that, or Red Shoe Diaries and stuff like that. But yeah, that was kind of like the jumping off point, sort of. Was the Beavis and Butthead, staying up for that, and then seeing what else was coming on around the same time.
Well, you know, that's Beavis and Butthead started on Liquid Television.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. I just looked up Liquid Television just now. I have the page open to it. I never actually had a thing that came up and said Liquid Television. So at the time, I didn't know that. All I knew was, you know, some feed from MTV was being shown. Sometimes on Much Music, sometimes on Teletoon.
It's like the first instance I can think of animation, you know, that I was familiar with. It was animation not for children, you know. It was maybe not necessarily adults, but, you know, young adults.
Yeah. And for me, that was right when Teletoon launched, which is funny. Said Teletoon's never been as good ever since they got like regular programming. Because when Teletoon launched, this would have been around, I guess, like early '98. It might have been the end of '97, start of '98. Like they didn't even really have regular programming, so they just sort of stuck stuff in, and that's how I managed to watch a few like full length like animes. The most notable being Ninja Scroll. Like they just showed Ninja Scroll, and that like blew my fucking mind. And then the other one, not nearly as good as Ninja Scroll and not really as memorable, was Pat Labor, but still it was something, you know. And they were both like Ryan and I. Ryan was sleeping over at my house, and we were up late, and just boom, we just stumbled on Ninja Scroll, you know. And that was probably my exposure, I guess so.
That's cool. So it was just kind of like a mixed match of things. Of cartoons?
For like the first few months, like they might have had a few shows, but like if it was like a Friday or Saturday night, they would just stick in like some movie, like I said, and often it would be anime. Now they haven't had that programming since the very beginning. They've had like regular stuff for years and years, but in the very first days, and I remember it very clearly because the age I was at and everything like that, they often would just have like a full-length movie. Half the time it would be an anime movie, but they haven't done that in a really long time. I haven't seen Inception, but even though it's not from that era, but a lot of people say that Inception has a lot of anime qualities to it.
I could see some of the martial arts sequences, maybe.
Yeah. And as part of that era, one of my favorite movies, and the movie I like more than The Matrix, as I've pointed out many times, is Dark City. Really like Dark City. It has a lot of. It definitely has an anime aesthetic to it. There's some things in it that remind you a little bit of Akira, for instance.
Sure. We should do that movie sometime on here.
Yeah. And by the way, when I was talking, remember when we were having a conversation, and I was going off about how much Black Swan rips off Perfect Blue.
Right.
Then it occurred to me, and I was just saying, what's the name of that director again? That's
Darren
Aronofsky. Right. And I was saying how I don't even like most of his stuff, and I only really like Requiem for a Dream. I completely forgot, even though I still like Requiem for a Dream, saying it's a good movie. Like, even Requiem for a Dream also has a scene that completely lifted from Perfect Blue. So it really puts like the kibosh and any like claims he was making earlier about like, well, he didn't even really know the movie that well, and like it's, you know, kind of coincidental that it had anything to do with Black Swan. It's like, well, it turns out he was ripping it off before he even made Black Swan. Because yeah, there's this whole scene in like the tub that's like the same, like where it's like freaking out in the tub and shoves his head underwater. It's pretty much the same thing.
He just really likes Perfect Blue.
Yeah, I mean, who can blame him? I really like it too. And as I said, there were some bad movies from that era that totally sucked that they were trying, like Van Helsing. Van Helsing tried. Van Helsing tried to be like Vampire Hunter D, but you know, failed utterly. As I said, it was a mix and match. There's more too, but there's some good ones and there's some bad ones, I think. And in the end, there were kind of more bad ones, like because they couldn't always get them right, and so it's always been sort of a weird relationship. This isn't anything to inspire, but I'm sure you've heard this story many times, and it's 100% true again. Like it's not wild claims that like The Lion King is like a blatant ripoff of Kimba the White Lion, one of the creations of Osamu Tezuka. Like it's so similar, it's ridiculous to the point that one actually did have a lawsuit and everything.
Did they win?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like they won in like a settlement type thing. It wasn't like obviously.
They settled out of court probably.
Yeah, it was some sort of like side settling thing.
A lot of Disney stuff can probably be linked to something else somewhere.
Yeah. Here's one that I never thought of that I'd read somewhere, and I'll have to. And it's funny because for the first time in many years, I just saw Avatar again. For like maybe the first time since I saw it in theater, and I still like the movie. I mean, I get all its faults, but I like it. But people have said like they think that it has like draws to Princess Mononoke. I find that one harder. I'd say theme wise, sure, but not style wise. Like yes, theme wise, yeah, like protect the world, don't rape and pillage the world for its resources, sure. But I don't really think stylistically it has very much.
I mean, Fern Gully had that message though. I mean, come
on.
Exactly,
and it's freaking awful. A lot of people really like Looper. And people have compared that to various anime. Yeah, kind of. I think that's more of its like setup than necessarily its style. I don't think it has much of an anime style. I was really underwhelmed by Looper. People really liked Looper when it came out, and I was just bored by it. I was really bored by it.
Underwhelming. Yeah, underwhelming to me too.
And I've harped on it before, but why not? Like, I just never bought that Joseph Gordon-Levitt could ever age into anything like Bruce Willis. Like, I mean, I get it. Whenever you have movies like this, where you have an older actor playing an older version, well, you always have to take a bit of a leap of faith. They can't do it exactly. But this one wasn't even in the ballpark. I was like, their ear structure is completely different. Like, you don't age that way. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, whatever's going on with his face is probably the most anime thing about that movie. Isn't it like digitally altered, or was it makeup? I don't remember. I know
someone. Yeah, I don't know.
He has like almost like an Asian eye to it.
I don't know what they're going for. And as someone who like, I'm a big anime person, big comic person, obviously I likes me some time travel. I hate how they treat time travel in this, to the point that like freaking Bruce Willis like looks in the camera and tells us not to think about it.
I love that kind of stuff, but I do not like that movie. I mean, I like the actors in the movie. I just don't like that movie. I don't know. It just doesn't work for me.
Speaking of false starts, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was another one. He had like a 4 or 5 year window where it's like, yeah, he's the guy, and not so much now. Not that's a big deal. Like, it's not even a criticism. It's just funny how things go.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was in Inception. That's one.
Yeah, which is big.
And I mean, I like a lot of his stuff.
So do I.
Lately, not so much.
But that's what I mean. The last 3 or 4 years, it seems like he's not really in big movies.
Have you seen Snowden?
No, is he in that?
I was gonna.
That's on Netflix. I could watch it.
Yeah, he's the title character.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, he looks like he maybe part Asian or something. He looks nothing like Bruce Willis. Let's just say that.
Yeah. And obviously Pacific Rim is kind of a love letter to a lot of mecha anime, which is fine. It's funny because I'm a huge Guillermo del Toro fan. I love most of his stuff, and I find that movie really irritating.
Oh, really?
It has some things I like in it, but I don't know. I hate it. Doesn't help that it has Charlie Day in it, because Charlie Day makes me like grind. Man, I can't listen to him talk for like more than 5 seconds. Just always like I don't know. He just reminds me of like a homeless person on the street shouting. He's always like, "Hey, hey!" I was like I don't know. It just seems like he's always like shouting at people to get their attention or something. I don't know. I don't get it. It just seems like a really
lot of that
really pushy guy.
And Sunny, always Sunny, does that a lot.
Yeah, and see, that's not a show I like at all. I really don't have that sense of humor. Like, I get like the point is it's kind of like a Seinfeld thing, except for Seinfeld I like it, but this is just like, get it? These people are awful. It's funny, and it's like, no, they're just awful.
Yeah, I like the show a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I can't go that far. I can't. I'm just like,
I don't know that the point is that they're awful, but I mean they are awful.
Oh, they're pretty awful. One of them might be like a psychopath.
Oh, I think most of them are. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think that's too many, but that's me. Obviously, it's a popular show. A lot of people really like it, but no, I don't know. I can have a weird sense of humor, twisted sense of humor, dark, or whatever you want to call it and stuff, but it doesn't go quite that far, I guess, because I can't really I appreciate what they're trying to do, but I don't find it enjoyable. I'm just like, ugh. And Charlie Day's not the worst character on it. He's not. He's kind of more sympathetic than some of the other characters, at least I find. But he himself annoys the piss out of me.
Understandable.
Yep.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt was in Family Ties. Who knew?
Wow, he had to have been really little kid for that. I saw him. I went to see this movie in theaters when I was a kid. I saw Angels in the Outfield, and he's the star of that, which is a remake. I never saw the original.
Oh, really?
But I remember it's like from like the 50s or something. Really old. It's like one of those old like throwaway like Disney movies. But I can't even remember it. I just know he's the kid in it, and it may or may not have had Christopher Lloyd in it. Did it have Christopher Lloyd in it? Is he one of the angels? I want to say yes, but
probably.
I literally haven't seen that movie in like 25 years when it came out. I think it came out like around 95 or something like that, or whatever the math is.
Yep, 94.
Saw it in theaters because it was I saw it in theaters because it was something as a kid I could see, more or less.
Yep. I didn't see that one, but I saw pretty much everything that was similar to that.
Yeah. I mean, I did not recognize him at all when I started watching Third Rock from the Sun. I did not make any sort of connection. To me, that was when I first knew who he was. Yeah, Third Rock from the Sun. Show I really liked. I think we talked a little before about John Lithgow on it and stuff. But I mean, by the time I saw, about a few years later for Halloween H2O, I was like, there's Tommy from Third Rock from the Sun. Because he's in like that opening scene.
Had he cut his hair at that point, or was it still long?
Still long.
Because that was kind of his thing. Like, he was a long-haired kid for a while.
Yeah, it was still long in that. It's the part, remember, he's slamming the hockey stick around, making threats at the beginning?
I don't remember it.
H2O? Oh. What's funny is I think that whole opening scene, I don't like H2O, but I think that whole opening scene is actually pretty good. With him and the body and the skate blade and how they'd found who was it? It was supposed to be like Loomis's assistant, because it was like Loomis had died a few years ago, but he had an assistant, and that person's office had been ransacked. I thought that whole like opening sequence was well done. Then the movie just sort of goes downhill. But he's in it, and he gets killed. He's slamming a hockey stick around, talking about how he got suspended for like spearing people or something. It's pretty funny. But yeah, at that point, he still had the long hair, so I recognized him right off. I was like, oh, there's Tommy from.
I do remember that. I think, yeah. And by the way, Christopher Lloyd, it was in Angels in the Outfield.
Yeah, he's one of the goofy. He's the goofy first angel that visits him. Yeah,
Al, the boss angel, whatever the hell that is.
Sure.
I
can just remember.
Though. Did you ever see
that's a baseball movie too. I know it's about a kid who gets like, because he can pitch really well, plays for a major league team. I never saw it.
It breaks his arm, and then when his arm is healed, he can like throw the ball really fast.
Oh, it's not like he had the talent. Breaking his arm somehow made it super awesome and strong. That's funny. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I hate baseball a lot, and it makes me biased. It makes me biased because I've often said, you can make a good movie about anything. I'm like, you can make a movie about something that doesn't interest me. It can still be good. I say that all the time, but I'm still biased because I still completely steer clear of baseball movies for the most part. I really do. I made the mistake of watching Moneyball a couple years ago. I was like, never again.
Oh, you didn't like Moneyball? That was okay.
Oh,
yeah, I don't like baseball either.
And then I read up on like how full of lies it is. Like, it's not like he just took some team full of misfits and made them good. They had some of the best players in the league on the team.
Is it the Red Sox?
They had guys that won like. No, it's not the Red Sox, but
I think he went to coach the Red Sox the next year, and then they won. That's what it was.
But they show him like, he's like, oh, he's revolutionizing because he's using stats. Like, this guy gets on base this many times. And he did do some of that. But the main reason they won was they had some amazingly good players already in place, like that he didn't go get. He had like a Cy Young winner on there. But anyway.
Now, was this fat Jonah Hill or skinny Jonah Hill?
That was transitioning Jonah Hill, which is really weird to look at. So it's like he's not really fat anymore, and he's on his way. He's that Jonah Hill.
I think he's just really short, so he can
that movie might be the best example of it. Actually,
he can drop like 50 pounds and look like a completely different person.
Yeah,
because like the first 21 Jump Street, he's super skinny.
Yeah,
and then the second one, he's fat again.
He got like fat again for the Wolf of Wall Street movie, I guess, because they wanted to make him look more pathetic for the character. I don't know if he's gotten skinny since then. Has he?
Was that a choice to get fat again, or it just?
Oh, I don't know. I thought maybe it's just because the character's kind of a loser, so they're like, yeah, fatten it up, Jonah. I don't know.
Smoke crack and get fat, Jonah. I'm on it. I'm on it, Scorsese.
Yeah, you're gonna show your dick. Oh, that's okay. Oscar-winning film. I'll do it. I assume. But yeah, I don't know. I love pushing my unpopular opinions on people. And my unpopular opinion is, as great as that movie is, I just feel like Leo getting the Oscar was just a makeup because he deserved it on like at least 2 or 3 other occasions. And they're like, okay, we'll give it to you this time. Because I just don't think it's that hard to act like you're like all drugged up. I really don't. I feel like it just requires some overacting. You don't have to be subtle. Yeah. I mean, is there any subtle complexity in being on Quaaludes and going and like I mean, it's fun and enjoyable and good. I just don't really think that pushes his acting skills. But he's, I think, as I said, I think Leo's one of the best actors of his generation. I think he's done all sorts of things. Nobody's run the gamut of accents like him. You name an accent, he's done it and done it pretty well.
Yeah.
Like maybe not nailed it perfectly, but done it well.
Sure.
And you have to give him credit because there's plenty of actors out there that don't even attempt them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, screw it. My Robin Hood was born in Queens.
Yeah, like Russell Crowe is a good example. He just does the same voice for everything, no matter what.
That's hilarious. I have a story about this. I had to look it up because my friend told me. So again, going back to the 2010 Robin Hood, he was doing press for it, and he was talking to some like Scottish actor or something like that. And I can't remember what he said, but he said something about the accent that he was doing for Robin Hood, how it like had a hint of this in or something like that. And he wasn't even being critical, but it wasn't what Russell Crowe wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And he told him to like fuck off, and he like threw the chair down and left. Which is really funny. I mean, you're from Australia, and this guy from Scotland is telling you something about a Scottish accent, so he probably knows what he's talking about. And he wasn't saying something like you got it wrong. He was saying like, oh, I detected like a hint of something or whatever in your accent or something like that. And he was just like, oh, fuck off. There's not. I mean, like he just got really pissed. And this is right around the. I don't know if he's cooled off in the last few years, but this is right, the height of his really volatile years and stuff. So. Yeah, a friend of mine told me about that. I found it online, looked it up. You can probably still find it somewhere.
Yeah. Gerard Butler is another one that does really terrible accents.
Yeah. Every time he plays an American, you hear his normal accent break through.
Well, he's done stuff like, what was the Gods of Egypt movie that he did? And he's just doing straight up Scottish accent. Like,
well, it's even worse than like 300.
Yeah.
Like, are these the Spartans or are they the Celts? You know, this is Sparta might be like the most heavily like accented thing he does in the movie. He might as well have been like, "This is Sparta, laddie." Like, it sounds that Celtic when he says it. I still really love that movie. It's a lot of fun. But that was the first thing I didn't even know who Gerard Butler was until he showed up in that movie screaming and showing off his abs.
I think that's, pretty much what put him on the map. It's definitely what he's known for. And then he did Rock and Rolla.
I still haven't seen that. I heard it was quite bad. Like that, they made like all the previews made it look like it was like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels or something. And then I asked people, and they're like, "No, it's not." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
It's trying to be like that, but I don't think it quite achieves it. So was that Guy Ritchie?
Yeah,
I like a lot of Guy Ritchie stuff. I like that Lock, Stock, and Snatch. He did Snatch too, right?
Yeah, I love Snatch. Snatch is still one of my favorites.
The fuck has he done? He did the Sherlock movies? Yeah.
Which are pretty good. I enjoy them, but yeah, what? No, he didn't. He just do like some weird King Arthur Legend of the Sword movie that, like, as far as I know, was in theaters for 2 seconds.
So was The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the one before that. That bomb.
Was that his?
Too, yeah.
Maybe he doesn't always have to do things that are 100% British.
He's doing
like,
Aladdin.
He's the one who's doing Aladdin.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, have fun with your Will Smith genie.
That's gonna suck.
I mean, I get it. You can't just have somebody out there and be like, okay, be like Robin Williams. I get it. Do something different. Sure. But Will Smith?
I don't like Will Smith, though.
All it's going to remind me of is freaking Kazam. I don't know if that's racist, but that's what's going to remind me of. It's going to remind me of Shaq running around in Kazam.
It's not racist when it's a rapping genie. Come on.
Well, there you go. Let's green egg and ham it. That's an actual line from Shaq's rap.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
I don't know. Something to do with Dr. Zeus, I guess. I don't know. But he does say that. Oh, here's something I read. For months, people thought this was a joke, but it's not a joke. There is going to be a sequel to Shaq Fu. There's going to be a new Shaq Fu video game on new systems, like in the next year.
Okay.
Like one of the most maligned and worst games of all time. Always makes lists of worst games of all time. Unbelievable. What's funny is remember I told you about like that amazing issue of EGM I had that started it all, the big number 65. Shaq Fu was one of the featured games in it. It had like at least 4 pages on it. It's amazing. And it was like a preview for it, so it wasn't even a review. It was them like legitimately trying to like hype up this game.
Right. Well, yeah, I remember it being relatively popular. Back in the days before you could review things online, you had no way of knowing it sucked.
Right. No. But man, yeah, it sucks something fierce, and not just because it's incredibly stupid. It was just like it had bad gameplay mechanics.
Really,
like the hitting was off. You would like hit somebody like here, and if they you would miss, and it would register as a hit. Like there's a term for that. I can't remember what it's called, but like hit mechanics or something like that. They're almost as bad as any game ever released. For instance,
is it a fighting game like a la Mortal Kombat or something?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Like it's like Shaq is like he's in town to do some sort of like celebrity tournament thing. Then he gets like whisked away to like some mystical dimension where he's like told that he's like the chosen one to stop some sort of evil sorcerer called Set Ra. So who murdered some pharaoh or something. Anyway, you have to go it's got a really expansive story for being something about Shaq fighting people, but yeah, they really go all out. He gets teleported to another dimension. He has to go on like this weird kung fu quest and fight people to take down an evil sorcerer. Yeah, he's the chosen one. They literally call him that. Oh, it's called Hitbox Dissonance. Yes. But you can see the Angry Video Game Nerd. He does a review of it that's pretty good. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah.
I may have
but
seen
yeah.
that.
So anyway, for the last few months, there was stuff floating around on the internet about being a new Shaq Fu, and everybody was sure it was a joke. It was a big hoax. From what I've read, it's not. Like it's actually happening, and that Shaq himself confirmed it's happening. I guess there is a trailer that came out in June. I haven't actually watched it yet. But yeah, it's called Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn. So that's something to look forward to.
Here's the trailer. Shaq looks like a monster.
Here's my question. Like, is it still based on 90s Shaq, or they're actually going to age him for real? Like, is this version of Shaq the chosen one still?
So it's Shaq and just a bunch of generic characters?
That's what the original was, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to...
A bunch of made-up... I don't really remember the characters. I just know that the end bad guy was like a... But yeah, just a bunch of generic stock characters that he has to fight, one at a time till he gets to the boss. Quite stupid.
There were lots of those that were terrible, though, around that period of time.
Yeah. This just stands out because Shaq, it's a basketball player.
Right, exactly.
It's an NBA star who's in that role for some reason.
Shaq has made up his own martial art.
Right. There is a little bit of truth to that because it has something to do with being over 7 feet. Because it goes back to when they were making Game of Death with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the various people, including, of course, Bruce Lee himself, were trying to show him how to incorporate, various martial arts into being that tall. Because they're saying it's actually kind of true that when you're that tall, there's a lot of stuff in normal martial arts that isn't very practical, and you have to kind of adjust it. So maybe it comes from that, like the super tall man's martial arts.
Well, yeah, like by the time you get your leg out, the dude's already kicked you 3 times. Because your leg's so long. Man, this trailer looks fucking crazy.
I haven't watched it at all. I will after this though, for sure.
Oh, it's on the Switch, by the way.
Yeah, that's one of the things I found out. It's going to be on the Switch. So, to the viewers at home, I recently got a Switch. It was never my intention, but I lucked out on it with the Shopper's Optimum points. So, pretty cool. Doing a lot of gaming lately. Yeah, I realize we haven't talked too much about the movie, but it's because there's a lot of similarities between it and the remake that we did last week. So I didn't think people mind getting the people like our extracurricular stuff anyway. So it's kind of
just retreading what we said last week because It is such a.
We'll do a more focused episode next time.
But what did you think of it? Did you like the movie? Did you like it better than the remake?
I like it slightly better than the remake. Like you said, it has a better, grittier feel to it. It doesn't feel as slick and produced. That movie, as I said, despite the remake, despite being, a pretty good movie and stuff, it does sort of feel like, even if it was intentional or not, it falls too much into the same category of trying to imitate something like Kiss the Girls or something like that. Like it just comes off that way. This movie predates that and, of course, is done on a lower budget. So it feels more like its own thing. I think I liked... Although I didn't think the killer was as good as Nick Nolte.
I agree.
I thought the other characters were probably a little bit better in this version. Although it's kind of a trade-off. It's kind of, when it comes to Jens and James, like they're a little bit different from each other. I respect what both do. And as we said, this one gives a little more stuff to the women. And just to let people know, because we hadn't said, like, this also has an ending scene. So in the remake, it ends basically after the rescue, after the whole thing goes down pretty much the same way. He goes to the Institute. He has Martin and his girlfriend Kalinka both get subdued by our killer, who is the cop. He has them all tied up and ready to go when the other cop, who only had one scene, shows up with Jens looking for them. And then, because of the stuff that Jen says and stuff not lining up, he's forced to, again, kill the cop, bash him with the bat. It's done a little better in the remake. It looks a little better in the remake.
Well, I like what they did.
The blood spatter.
The kill looked a lot better, but they didn't show that in the original. It was just the hit cut to the blood splattering on the glass, but Jen's face was right there screaming no. He was like, no, and the blood splattered. I like that, because they probably didn't have the money to do the graphic gore effect, in the remake.
Sure. Yeah, probably. So anyway, that happens. And at least the same thing. He overpowers Jens, handcuffs him, says, I'll come back for you. He has the cool little circular saw. He's about to go on there. Jens frees himself, cuts, I think, his thumb off, gets over there, finds the gun in the bag, shoots him dead. He just like screams, shooting him dead and stuff like that, saves the day. So that all goes the same, except that once they're outside and all the cops are there and everything, taking everything away, doing a little cleanup, that's just where the remake ends. This, we get a little bit of an epilogue where we get to see that both characters are getting married at the same time, which I think is kind of nice and kind of funny too, because those were supposed to be the stakes. If anybody failed at the challenge, they had to marry their girlfriend, because they kind of saw that as like, you know, a bad thing. You know, we're young, we're 24, we have our lives in front of us, we shouldn't get married. And then he even says, like Jen says, we're so goddamn predictable, which I liked. Like, here we are getting married. And then for like a little bit of a joke for the last challenge, Martin jokingly says to him, well, you know, when you get up there, say no. And he's just like, no. And he's just like, well, you know, it's just no. It's just a word. And then he can see Martin's eyes. And he's like, wait, no. Not Martin's eyes, Jen's eyes. He's like, no, that was a joke. I was kidding. And what I like is how much the characters like know each other stuff. She gets up there and he says no. And no one's like, everybody laughs. And then his girlfriend, his fiance, starts to laugh and talk. And then it fades out. I kind of like that. I like it.
I did too. I liked it a lot.
It's
you know, I think it says a lot, because I don't think I could imagine James marrying his girlfriend in the remake.
Maybe that's like, you know, maybe that's why they didn't do it. Maybe they thought it wouldn't be believable.
He's such a fucking scumbag. I don't think I could see him like, because he treats her like absolute shit, like most of the movie. But I guess
that's true.
Jens does kind of too.
Yeah. In fact, we do get, again, some of the added stuff where we find out that she's doing her church duties and stuff. One of the things that he decides to say no to is that he won't take the sacrament. Like, he screws up the service.
Right. Well,
and then he like barfs.
I think he was really, really drunk or really hungover, and it made him sick.
Yeah. It made him sick, but Martin did tell him to say no first, and he does say no. Then he does take it, and then he barfs it up. But then what he does sort of like explain, it's funny too, he's outside, and she's just like, oh, you don't care about me. He's like, I'm crazy about you. And she's like, you can't even say you love me. And he's like, I love you. You know, I don't know. I like that added stuff. And as we said, with Josh Brolin as James, they took it a little different direction, which is fine. And as we said, maybe they thought it would be a little bit unbelievable for them to have the dual wedding and stuff like that. And I like that they said we're so goddamn predictable, because, you know, you've seen a lot of movies where it's like, and now the heroes get married and everything gets wrapped up. But it's funny in this context. Like, I like it. It's funny.
It was a big shift in tone. You know, you went from the thriller aspect directly into almost like a, you know, situational comedy.
Yeah.
Which it worked, though, I think.
I think so, too. That's the one thing I've just noticed about a lot of foreign filmmakers. Asian especially, but I mean, even Europe, like, they're less afraid to screw with the tone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Whereas it seems like a lot of the American-made, the Hollywood films, like very few, like, they have a tone and they really want to stick to it, which I get, which I think works for like 90% of movies anyway. You should, but it seems like they're less willing to take chances with the tone. And I get it, because that's a risky thing. Because if the tone is off, then, like, you know, everything about it will feel wrong or ring hollow. It's like, was I supposed to take it seriously, or was I supposed to laugh at it? Like, I get it. But no, I do admire that about this movie, that they sort of do a kind of a shift in tone, and they just sort of put it out there and give it a try. And for me, it paid off. I liked it. I thought it was enjoyable. In fact, it made that whole cliche funny. You know, because they even admit, like, oh, it's such a cliche. We're so predictable. It's like, here we at the end of our events, and we're both marrying our respective girlfriends. Like, I didn't find that, like, I wasn't like, oh, that's boring and disappointing and predictable. I was like, oh, that's funny. Like, I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I was the same way. Yeah, I think it's just the willingness to take a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like in this situation, I think it works. So,
yeah. So I assume with the remake, you know, they based it on the original script, and then they rewrote it. Steven Soderbergh rewrote it, and he changed some things here and there. And that's obviously one of the changes.
What the fuck could he have, like, why Soderbergh gets a credit for writing on this thing? Like, it's the exact same movie. They just took some shit out. The exact same movie. That's so stupid. But Harvey Weinstein's like, take the fucking wedding out at the end and make this fucker likable.
Yeah. No sex in the morgue. No shot of his junk. Let's not make the people too uncomfortable.
Make people like this fucking prick.
Is that his voice? I'd like the pictures. I don't think I've ever seen the Weinstein's like footage of them, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up.
There's a whole a documentary that it's a book and a movie on them. I forget what it is, but same guy that wrote the book I was telling you about, the New Hollywood generation.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I can't think of it. Easy Riders and Raging Bulls.
Okay,
that was the name of his book.
Weinstein's are so powerful now. So
yeah, he wrote an entire like he apparently worked pretty closely with them, and it's some pretty damning stuff in there. So I don't really have a lot of respect for them. They essentially bought the one Oscar that they have.
Which one is that movie?
Romeo and Juliet get married,
or
what is it? It's the one fucking the blonde Gwyneth Paltrow was in.
For how long ago?
90s, like 98, 97.
Okay. She did Shakespeare in Love?
Shakespeare in Love, that's it.
Wow, that one. Oh, yeah, it won Best Picture. And she won Best Actress. So that's their only movie they did that got a Best Picture.
I think so, but they essentially just bought that. They just went and they paid all the voters.
I've seen, I don't think all of it, but I've seen most of it. I've seen like a lot of scenes from it, but I probably haven't seen it all the way from beginning to end.
I saw it on a date when I was like, 16 years old, but it was not a good movie.
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein is credited as producer.
As the head douchebag.
What's that? Well, didn't he produce Pulp Fiction? Oh, yeah, that didn't win anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, but she didn't win anything.
Well, they basically gave Tarantino free reign to do pretty much whatever he wants. Which is why, I mean, shit, no other studio would let him do Django Unchained.
Oh, all right. Oh, that's right. They started with The Burning, as we always note on the Sausage Factory. The Burning was the beginning. Oh, that's interesting. So, of the two, Harvey is the one that did less. Bob has more producing credits.
Really?
Yeah, quite a few more. It seems like Harvey only wanted to lend his name to the big name ones after a certain period, where Bob, he's on She's All That and The Faculty and The Prophecy 3 and Crow Salvation, Serendipity, like all those, like those all have Bob, but not Harvey.
Do you remember in the 90s when a lot of kung fu movies were coming over here or coming over to the States?
Yeah, a lot of the Jackie Chan ones, and a couple.
They would be all chopped up and fucked up. Like they would take a lot of movies and they would totally like re-edit them and then release them to the American audiences.
Yeah, I didn't know that at the time, but yeah, I saw a lot of those Jackie Chan movies in theaters during that time. Like I saw First Strike.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw Rumble in the Bronx in theaters, but I could have. I saw it later. I didn't see Super Cop either, but they did some like re-release of some older ones.
Yeah.
Because like that's how I saw Operation Condor, which is like the 80s, but they released it around like 96, 97 or something that I got to see it.
I saw every one of those in the theater.
Yeah. But
I was a big fan, but not necessarily those. I'm trying to see if I can find a list of what he's done. Just like look at the stuff he's produced, and you can find some of it. I mean, just totally like chop the stuff up, and like to the point, a lot of directors just didn't even want to deal with them because they would basically make their movie different than what they were,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously they have such a presence. They've done a lot of movies. Well, not done, but they've been involved with a lot of movies I like. But yeah, but no, I don't know. I have trouble giving too many people that are producers that much credit. Most producers don't do very much. Oh, I know what you mean. Oh yeah, they're the idiots that tried to ruin Princess Mononoke. I've told you, even one of the guys on that sent him a katana that told him you couldn't make any cuts. It said no cuts, because that's one of Studio Ghibli's rules. We'll release these movies over here, but you are not cutting anything. And that was part of it. They knew they had a reputation. But yeah, it was Shaolin Soccer and Hero and stuff like that. So that's early 2000s, those ones.
It was a lot, though. It was a lot of films that they... I mean, it wasn't just Asian films. It was films from all over the world.
Yeah. Miyazaki commented on the incident. Actually, my producer did that. Although I did go to New York to meet this man, this Harvey Weinstein, and I was bombarded with this aggressive attack. All these demands for cuts. I defeated him. That's great. I defeated him.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I'm not cutting for fun, he said in the interview. I'm cutting for the shit to work. All my life, I served one master, the film. I love movies. No, you love money, but yeah.
Well, you heard about the whole debacle with Mimic, right? The Del Toro film.
I'm going to guess they didn't let him do very much. I've seen Mimic. I like it.
His first English speaking movie, or his first
right.
American movie. They basically took what he had and they recut it. They totally re-edited everything. And he's actually he put out a director's cut version a few years ago.
Del Toro?
Del Toro did, which is really not a whole lot better in my opinion, but it's better than what was the version you're probably used to.
Mm-hmm. But I haven't seen it in a lot of years. I don't know if I'd be able to recognize differences at this point. I mean, I always thought it was an okay movie, and you can see the beginnings of some of his style in there.
Yeah. But it was apparently a nightmare to work on, with them, because they're the hands-on producers that are like they're on set every day.
Every day.
They you how to do stuff.
Yeah. No, I've even heard that much, but yeah, I'd forgotten. Yeah, that they had that reputation for the cutting and stuff like that.
Operation Condor 2, which I don't even think that's the right title as far as those movies go.
No, what it is Armor of God came out. And then Operation Condor wasn't even a sequel, but you could say it was. And what they did was so then they flipped the titles and flipped things. So they called Operation Condor 2 was actually Armor of God. So they're saying the sequel is the one that came before. It isn't actually the same movie. I mean, you see that happen all the time with a lot of these Chinese movies and stuff.
Isn't a lot of Jackie Chan's movies are like that when they brought them, over here? Like the names and the titles and the sequels.
Well, yeah. What's funny is how they just sort of dropped some of them because there's Police Story and Police Story 2, Police Story 3, Police Story 4, but they felt the need I don't know if Police Story 1 and 2, even though they're the best ones, I don't remember them ever getting released over here. And Police Story 3 is technically what they called Super Cop. Then they made a standalone sequel to Super Cop 2, that doesn't even have him in it, that has Michelle Yeoh, and then. And First Strike is technically Police Story 4, even though it's not Police Story 1 and 2 are direct sequels. Same characters, same universe, same stream of events. Part 2 picks up right after Part 1. After that, it doesn't matter. It's just a title. So it doesn't really matter that they dropped the Police Story name for the sake of clarity, except that it's kind of annoying because you want to know that it's for quality purposes, that it's the same series and stuff like that. But that doesn't really matter too much. Tell you the truth, it doesn't really matter that you see First Strike and it's not called Police Story 4 because they called it Jackie Chan's First Strike because that's more what people knew. People over here didn't know Police Story, but they knew the name Jackie Chan, so that's what mattered.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I liked First Strike quite a bit.
Loved it. That blew my mind when I saw that in the theater. That was like a life-changing moment for me. I loved it.
I think Operation Condor is really good too.
Oh yeah. Does all sorts of cool nifty things. So yeah. We'll do an episode or two where we can talk about some of that stuff too. Some good, because I'd love to talk about stunts and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, man.
Because those movies even have good driving stunt. You watch Armor of God, I think, and it's got some really good driving in it. Who Am I has some great driving at the beginning.
I don't think I've seen that one.
That's a cool one. That's around their era too. That was around 97, I think. It has some really great fight scenes in it.
Is there a set of all the original like Hong Kong films?
No.
Is that's the only option I have then? Is just the ones released here?
Well, part of me wonders if Shout Factory's going to get on their asses and give them more treatments, because I own Police Story 1 and 2 on a Shout Factory release, which is great on Blu-ray. Except what's weird is the dubbing isn't the dubbing that I saw in theaters. So because as I said, like 90% of the time I don't watch dub movies. You know, it's annoying subtitles. But like you and like a lot of people, I got used to the Jackie Chan dubs because that's what I saw, and also because he did his own voice. Everybody else might have been dubbed horribly, but at least he did his own voice. But on the Shout Factory editions of Police Story 1 and 2, if you watch it dubbed, it's not him. It must be before he did it, because it's back in the 80s, so I guess he wasn't speaking that much English then. So that was...
I want to see it. It's not dubbed. I want to see the original version with subtitles is what I would like. But
yeah, well,
I guess those
maybe they'll do... But since they did Police Story 1 and 2, it stands to reason why not do the others. So I don't know if that's because of a legal thing or who owns what or what, but it leaves me hopeful, because those are like the editions that they're supposed to be. Things aren't cut out. You can watch them subtitles, etc. So that leaves me hopeful. Because and like you were, well, I assume maybe you own a few. Like I own Who Am I on DVD. It's a very bare bones, crappy DVD. You know, I don't even think you have the option to watch it subtitled. I think you have to watch it dubbed, I think.
I don't like dubs, but I guess if you don't have a choice.
So, I mean, I'll look into some of that, see if there's any newer releases coming out and stuff, because, yeah. There's been some interest. Of course, they keep doing different editions of Bruce Lee stuff, but I mean, I'm getting a little bored of that. What's really weird is, like, there's that Bruce Lee box set that everybody knows. That's all his films except for Enter the Dragon. Like, what? What's the point of that? Enter the Dragon is his like most famous film.
Yeah, I've got
it's not on
Enter the Dragon on like every format available.
Yeah, I've got like a bare bones like Blu-ray of it. I got it for like $7.99.
Yeah, it's probably the same one I have. I don't know if they've done a special edition.
It's weird though, isn't it? It's weird. Anyway, we will look into some of that stuff for the future. I think we'll wrap up for tonight before we meander too much. But yeah, good. It's an interesting comparison. Not as many differences, like we said, as in some of these movies that get remakes. It's a very straightforward remake for the most part. I think we touched on the reasons why they might have done it that way. It's also a little different because it does have the same director. As has been pointed out to us, and what I couldn't remember was that another... Well, I think it's at least partially Danish film, The Vanishing, came out. And then for the American remake of that was also the same original director. That might be one we do sometime. But we won't do a compare and contrast, because I will not do the remake, because that's one where I just think the remake is so awful.
Is that with Jeff Bridges?
I don't know. I think Kiefer Sutherland's in it.
I think Kiefer Sutherland too.
I don't know about Jeff Bridges. It's possible. It's been so many years.
I don't think I've seen the sequel to that. At least not.
I haven't seen it in many years, but actually, I had the opportunity to see it only like a few weeks ago. Like I think it was on TV or something. It might even be on Canadian Netflix. I think it is. I think it's on at least my version of Netflix. It's just the remake, not the original.
I want to watch the original.
Yeah, I saw the original. It's been about 4 or 5 years since the last time I saw it. It's a very slow, deliberate film, but it's still quite good. So that's something we might do in the future, but we won't do a remake versus original in that case. But we touched on a few things that we might want to cover going forward, and we'll certainly let you know as we go. As we said, this was just sort of something kind of a compromise that we had to do, because we didn't want to just cancel this week's episode, so we just moved it to today. But we're still going to stick with Tuesdays, so hopefully everything goes fine, and we'll see you again next Tuesday, and we get that. But thanks, guys. If anybody's watching live that adjusted to watch it tonight, we appreciate that.
Yep, we will get together and we'll let you know on Twitter what we're going to be doing next week. Stay tuned to the Twitter page.
Yeah, look for that. All right, I think that's going to do it. So Thanks for being with us, and we will see you very soon with a brand new episode.
All right.
The Podcast Convention, that's Jay. I'm Cole. We'll see you later. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.